Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Bikes or Death podcast. As always, my name is Patrick, and I'm your host. And on today's episode, we are going to be following me as I take on the Arizona Trail 300-mile version. This has been a trail that's been on my personal bucket list for like 5 or 6 years. I love desert landscapes. I love riding in the desert. I just love everything about the desert, other than the fact it's trying to kill you all the time. Actually, I love that part about it too, because I feel like you kind of earn it a little bit more in the desert. But the Arizona Trail has been on my personal bucket list for a long time, and I can't ever make the group start because I host and run my own events during October. So I decided to do a Spring ITT, which is the Arizona Trail race used to start in the spring. And so I was like, okay, well, let's try a Spring ITT. And in doing so, I decided to invite anybody to join me. And so we ended up having 4 of us total. It was me, Ian from Canada, Gregg from California, and Dan from Idaho, all lined up on Thursday, April 11th. We were supposed to roll out at 7 a.m., but we rolled out at 7:12, which was close enough, close enough. So today's episode is me on the trail, taking you along for my ride, sharing my thoughts and experiences and feelings as I attempt for the first time the Arizona Trail. So that is today's episode, and it's a long one, so we're going to make this intro short and sweet. Before we get into it, let's take a moment to thank the people that made it possible, starting with our latest batch of patrons. So this week, we would like to thank Carrie Holt and Fabian Schwartzler for signing up to be sustaining members of the Bikes or Death podcast. We truly appreciate your support and everybody who can support this podcast. If you would like to find out more about becoming a patron, you can do so over at patreon.com/bikes-or-death. Today's episode is also brought to us by Old Man Mountain, and today's ad is going to come from me because I just used 2 of Old Man Mountain products on the Arizona Trail. I used their new axle pack, which is the new product from Old Man Mountain. I think it's just come out in the last couple months. The axle pack is a really neat product that allows you to take any fork and add mounting points to it. So, for example, I rode this full suspension bike. It doesn't have mounting points on the suspension fork. I'm not aware of any that do. And so the axle pack, it comes with a custom axle that also has a mounting point in there. And then at the top, there's like a mounting point that you zip tie on. And that gives you 3 bolts to be able to attach things to your front fork. For me, I ran the wide foot leader cages on either side, and on one side I had a 1.5 liter Nalgene, and then on the other side I had a 1 liter Nalgene. Ultimately, I carried 6.5 liters of water for the Arizona Trail, and I carried my water there. And then further back, all of my bikes are hardtails or gravel bikes. I don't own a full suspension bike, and so I have kind of the traditional saddle bag that goes under the seat. That's what I typically use, but that doesn't work on a full suspension bike with a dropper post. So with full suspension, depending on your frame height, the rear tire could come up when compressed and hit the bag. Also, if you're trying to use a dropper seat post, you're going to come down and hit the tire. So I use the Old Man Mountain Elkhorn rack on the back, and then I volet strapped a dry sack on top of that, and that gave plenty of room for storage for everything that I needed to carry, and it also allowed for my dropper seat post to come all the way down. And I can tell you that both of those systems worked absolutely flawlessly. I have to say that the Arizona Trail is a great way to test gear. Like if you want to find out if something's going to rattle off or break or hold up to rugged conditions, the Arizona Trail is a great proving ground to that. So I absolutely took all of my equipment to the absolute extreme. And I just remember going down these super gnarly downhill single track descents at 25 miles an hour, just gripping the handlebars and praying that I stay upright and leaping over boulders and everything's, and the bike performed well, but as far as Old Man Mountain stuff goes, it performed flawlessly. I was so impressed. I never had to readjust my gear, never had a water bottle fly out or anything like that. And I will say for the water bottles up front, I had the water bottles volet strapped to the leader cage as well. So everything was very secured, but I was really impressed with how well those products performed. Not only performed, but taking a bike like the Stump Jumper S-Works that I was riding, that is just a full-on, full suspension bike that is not designed to carry gear, but I was able to take this bike and easily turn it into a go anywhere, do anything, camping, bike packing bike, which is really cool. And that's something that Old Man Mountain really excels at, is having all of the products you need to be able to take any bike and turn it into a bike packing or a bike touring or a grocery getting or whatever bike. So big shout out to Old Man Mountain. Their products really came through for me. And if you want to check out some Old Man Mountain products and turn one of your bikes into a go anywhere, do anything bike, you can find out more over at oldmanmountain.com. And if you use the code Mountains or Death at checkout, you get 10% off. Again, to get 10% off your order, use the code Mountains or Death at checkout. And as a bonus, you can use the affiliate link in the show notes, and Bikes or Death will get a little kickback as well. And we thank you for that. All right. Well, ching, ching, ching. The bills have been paid. And now it is time to get to my episode with me. So without further ado, let's have my friend Miles Arbor kick it off with the Bikes or Death theme song.
You load up your bike, you ride away from home. You could be with your friends or you could be alone. You ride for a day or maybe more. You just love being in the great outdoors. Everything you need is strapped to your bars, including that new pillow you got from Santa Claus. And then you think, oh shit, to yourself. You left that super lightweight tent on the living room shelf. Bikes or death. Bikes or death. Podcast.
Patrick, thanks for putting this on.
Yeah, buddy. Have a good ride. See you at the end, I hope. Maybe.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you guys how pro slow I really am. 7:12.
Yeah,
right on time.
Right on time.
Close enough. Not
All right.
bad.
Where does this thing start?
This road here. Let's do it.
60% of the time? That's right, all the time.
All right. No turning back now.
I just turned back twice.
Right on.
See y'all. Maybe. Good morning, everybody. It is 8:55 on Thursday morning, and I am 11 miles into the AZT. We rolled out about 7:13 this morning. Got a slightly late start, but no big deal. And we're doing it. We're out here. Current events. The very first part of the start of the AZT is a 2.8 mile climb, and my bike does not want to really shift into the easier gears, and when it's in like the easiest gear, it keeps jumping down to the next gear, and then it'll dance and go back up, and it keeps just shuffling between gears, but it doesn't want to get settled, or at least it didn't. So very beginning started off with a little bit of mechanicals, but I stopped and adjusted my front bags, and I'm pretty sure the issue was that my front bags are creating a little extra tension on that shifter cable and causing it to not shift properly. So it seems to be working a little bit better now. Not great, but better than it was, and definitely rideable. I texted a friend, a mechanic friend, for advice. My assumption is that I need to adjust the barrel adjuster and not mess with the limit screws. I'm pretty sure that's the right answer, but I also don't know for sure. And so I'm gonna wait for a mechanic to text me back and give me some pointers before I make this problem worse. But for right now, it's rideable, and I'm making progress. And today it's starting out, the weather's pretty nice. It's starting to get a little warm, but you just almost have to laugh at the irony, because today is the first 90-degree day in Tucson. The weather leading up to this has been kind of more in the 70s, lower 80s. But first day of our AZT, and we get the first 90 degree day of the year. And so it's going to be hot. And I'm a little worried about it. Coming from Texas, and the part of Texas I'm in, first of all, it's at it's at sea level. And because we're so close to the Gulf, there's just a ton of moisture in the air. So I'm used to really damp climates. Even when it gets hot, it's just really muggy and pretty nasty. And lower elevation. So this climate that I'm riding in here in Arizona is quite a bit different. It's actually all the way different. So the race starts call it a race. I'm definitely just riding it. I'm definitely not racing it, for the record. You can call my ITT an individual time tour. But the route starts at somewhere close to 5,000 feet. And then it goes up over 8,000, crossing Mount Lemmon. And it's just at elevation, very dry, and going to be really hot. So those are going to be some of the conditions to keep an eye on and try to stay on top of. Of course, maybe it's not obvious, so I'll just tell you. I'm packing 6.5 liters of water, which is on the high end. Everybody else that's doing it is carrying like 4 tops. But I'm also planning on being out here longer than them and going slower, so there's going to be more time in between resupply points. So they don't need to carry as much food and water as I do. But I am absolutely loaded up with water and food. Yesterday I ordered a Papa John's pizza last night in the hotel room. I got a large, and I put all that into tinfoil. Then I made 6 peanut butter and honey sandwiches. And this morning we stopped at McDonald's, and I got an extra 3 breakfast burritos. So I have that for real food, which I'm kind of excited about. Of course, I have junk food like honey buns and Pop-Tarts and Paydays. And then I've got a bunch of electrolytes and Tailwind that I'll just constantly have in my bladder and be drinking for the whole ride. So really, obviously trying to stay on top of nutrition and hydration to help kind of balance out or counteract the negative or the impact of the heat, the sun, the dryness, and also the physical exertion over the next 4 or 5, 6 days. And I guess that's a good segue into talking about what my ride goals are. I don't have any super defined ride goals because the AZT is just really above my pay grade and outside my area of familiarity with bikepacking. I had to drive 16 hours to get here, so it's not close. And there's just like a lot of unknowns, you know. I'm unsure how my body and my brain, I guess, are gonna respond to this rugged trail and this rugged environment. So I'm really coming into this ride with an open mind, without any clear, time goals, and with the expectation that it's going to be hard, that I'm going to want to quit, that it'll challenge me probably more than I've ever been challenged, and that I want to keep going. Yeah, so I'm definitely not trying to go fast. I'm trying to finish. That is my number one goal. I'm trying to enjoy the route as much as possible and the views and the scenery along the way. And I have probably about 5 days before I need to be headed back to Texas to get my girls. I had to finagle to get a little extra time off to have a window here. And I'm just gonna, do my best. It's very difficult with so many unknowns to really make a hard plan. And there's other extenuating factors. I'll get into it in a minute, but just getting to the start line has been an extreme challenge, wrought with stress, anxiety, and difficulties. So the real race and the real challenge for me started months ago, just trying to get to the start line. But I am here and I am doing it. So today, let's talk about today. The first obstacle for today is that at mile 52.5, I believe, there is a piece of public or private land that you cannot trespass or pass through during night. So there's this 2-mile stretch that starts at 52.5 miles, and if you haven't arrived at that gate by sunset, then you have to stop there and wait for sunrise before you can keep going. So that's kind of objective number one today. And I'm not too worried about making that. We started at 7 a.m., so that gives us, probably 12 and a half, 13 hours to do the first 50 miles. So, barring any issues, that should be quite doable. I don't know if I'm going to make it there well before sunset or anything, but should be able to make that. And then right after that, at mile 54 or so, you reach a highway that takes you to Patagonia, which is a resupply point, if you want it. And it's about 4.5 miles off route. So TBD on whether or not I wind up stopping there, but right now my plan is to skip Patagonia and head to Kentucky Camp, which is about, I keep getting different numbers off the internet, but I'm going to say it's about 75 or 80 miles into today. And there's a water spigot there and some dispersed camping. So my goal today is to get to Kentucky camp and bivvy up there. And then tomorrow, head into the next resupply points, which there's several of them. I think they start around about 128 miles on the route, and that's just on the outskirt of Tucson. So I'm definitely going to take a little time there, eat some food. It's a major resupply point. And then the next stage will be Mount Lemmon, followed immediately by Oracle Ridge, which are both, I mean, from what I've heard and what I can gather, that's going to be the most challenging section of the ride. This year, there's snow up on Mount Lemmon, so John Schilling sent us a snow detour, which mostly keeps us on the road going up to Mount Lemmon, which will make it a little easier. So that's nice, I guess. But I think that climb it's like 22 miles or so coming out of Tucson, going from like 3,000 something feet up to 8,000 something feet. And then directly after that, there's Oracle Ridge, which is just a really gnarly ridge. It's mostly hiking, I understand. But to back up there just a little bit, in Tucson, I will probably grab a hotel on the second night. That would be around a mile, probably about 140 or so into the ride. And just get a good reset, a good sleep, charge everything, and take a shower, clean all my chamois. And then on morning of day 3, head up Mount Lemmon and tackle Oracle Ridge. And then from there, I'll just probably bivvy camp the rest of the way. Yeah, so that's kind of as far as I've made it in terms of planning. Once you leave Tucson, the resupply aspect of it gets a little bit more manageable. There's food and water at least every like 50, 60 miles. And I think there'd also be an option to like get an Airbnb or something along the way, but I'm kind of not really planning on that at this point. Yeah, just gonna try to make it through. What else? I think that's about it for my plan. It's gonna be ever evolving based on how slow I'm actually going and how I'm feeling. But so far, not too bad. Not too bad at all. It's beautiful out here. This morning we started with 4 riders. So we got Gregg. All right, I just summited a climb. That was a second climb out of, I think, 98 climbs over the 100 miles, which is actually surprised. I thought there'd be more climbs. But yeah, we started with 4. We got Ian from Canada, Gregg, originally from Texas, but now lives in California. And then we got Ian out of Idaho. And so we got 4 that started with us this morning, and 3 of us are doing the 300, me included. Gregg and Alan are both doing the 300, and they have plans to go much faster than me. Looks like they're both going for a sub 4-day ride. And then we have Ian, who's planning on the 800, but a guy just tried the 800 and got stopped in Payson which is about halfway due to snow. So Ian is he's going to see what he's going to do, but he might be stopping and pacing too. The last time he was out here, he actually rode the 800 southbound, and he only made it to Tucson. To Payson. So it'll be interesting because, this year he'll maybe ride to Payson and see the whole route coming from different directions. I decided I wasn't going to spend too terribly long talking about all the hardships and just little challenges that have come up leading up to the Arizona Trail, but I'm going to touch on them here just kind of briefly or semi-briefly. By the way, my bike still doesn't want to shift very well. It was doing good for a while, but now it's back in the dancing around. I guess it all kind of started, for the most part, with just taking on way too much stuff at the beginning of the year. I either signed up for or was in charge of 5 events in a 6-week period. So, I just got back from Doom. Before Doom, we had the ETS. Before the ETS was Mid-South. And then whenever I get back from the AZT, I turn around and I'm leading a Bikepacking Basics group ride out of Texas. And just going to those events in themselves is kind of not a huge deal, but when you're the one running them, there is just a mountain of work that happens behind the scenes. It surprises me how much work they are. You sign up to do these things and then you're doing them and you're like, holy shit, there's always something. So anyway, that's been one challenging thing, because when I have been home, I've really needed to be a father and provide for my kids and, cook and clean and take them to school and tennis practice and swimming practice and play card games with them or whatever. And so my training leading up to this has been fucking terrible, almost non-existent. The last real ride I went on was almost a month ago to the day at Mid-South when Natalie and I did the 100 miles there. And that was some good saddle time, and I felt really good on that ride. And then when I was in Arkansas, I went on a little 2-hour ride, and that honestly just scared me. Because, that short ride, I was still sore, and it was hard. I was like, how am I going to ride 300 miles if I can't even do 2 hours in the Ozarks? And honestly, I like to keep it real with you guys. And I've been really struggling, I've been really, really struggling mentally in a lot of arenas, but it all kind of filters down to being mentally difficult. And heading home from the Arkansas Doom, I had a 10-hour drive, and I was just overcome with strong feelings of doubt and insecurity and fear. And I can tell you honestly that at that time, I did not want to ride the AZT. I had made up my mind that I wanted to quit. I wrote down a pros and cons list. I think there were 12 things on the con list that I all thought were, legitimate reasons. Like any one of them could have been a potentially good enough reason to not do it, and I had 2 reasons to do it, and I was looking for a way to quit. My mind was like, fuck, I can't do this. Like, it wasn't just that, it was everything leading up to that, like all the stuff I took on. And then on top of that, to be real frank, money has been a huge issue. And I have, legitimate concerns about my ability to provide, for my girls, which, if it's just me, like, I don't really care. I'll go live in a car. But, oh shit, I almost missed my turn. That would have sucked. I need to turn on, like, my audio cues. I wonder if that's even an option. I bet it is. Okay. Almost had my first miss. And of course it's going to be when I'm recording. This is when I kind of zone out. So I got to really watch that. Yeah, so I mean, money's been really tough, and it's just adding a lot of stress and anxiety, because all my eggs are in the Bikes or Death basket right now, and the cycling industry is not good right now, and lots of companies are struggling and laying people off, and it's it's just not a good time to be in the bike business. And so in the background, I'm also trying to kick off my real estate career again, but it's not something where you just snap your fingers and it just happens. So there's a lot going on with that. And even if I got a client on day one, it's usually still at least 2 or 3 months before you actually get paid anything. So there's that. I just haven't felt like I've been managing life very well lately, and I've overcommitted myself, and I'm really I have no one to blame but myself, and that's kind of been one of the frustrating things is whenever it comes down to it, I'm the reason that I'm in this position, and it's that's kind of hard. That's a difficult pill to swallow. So anyway, let's skip over all that. That's kind of a baseline underscore stressor of life right now. But I'm looking forward very much to getting through with AZT, getting done with bikepacking basics, and then I'm taking some time off, and I'll finally have some time to kind of put my head down and start to address some problems, and I need a reset, I need to put my thinking cap on and have some time to work through some life problems. So, I'm not too far away from that. That's 2.5 weeks away. So, anyway, aside from that, there's just been a bunch of crazy circumstances that just keep on coming up. So first, I borrowed this full suspension bike from a listener of mine, and it's a super nice, I think it's an S-Works stump jumper. It's like a super expensive, nice bike, way too nice for me. And I don't want to, I kind of feel bad saying this because it's a really nice offer, but I just don't really love riding full suspension bikes, and a lot of that I think has to do with the part of the world that I live in. It's just overkill for where I live and where I ride, and it's why I don't own one. And it kind of, for me, dilutes the experience of riding and takes away some of the enjoyment. And so I was worried about riding, a full suspension bike for 300 miles. I was worried that it would detract from my enjoyment of the experience. And I was already planning on buying this new panorama bike, the Torngat Tie, which is a titanium hardtail, but it's a really unique bike because it's designed to be able to fit, standard mountain bike tires all the way up to a fat bike tire. And so I ordered that, and then we were waiting on a part of the Fox Fork. It took forever to get in, and it wasn't looking like it was going to make it in time. So just, less than a week before I had to leave for the AZT, I took this full suspension bike that I'm riding over to my friend's house, who's a mechanic, Tom. Shout out Tom. And to drop some parts off, and he was going to help me, get it ready. And then the very next day, Panorama emailed me and said, "Oh, that fork came in. We can, 2-day air it to you, and it'll be there on Friday." And so this would have been last Friday, and I left my house on Tuesday morning. So then I spent that whole day trying to find a mechanic that could build the bike up. I needed a wheel built and just put the bike together, assemble it, get it dialed and tuned in. And my local bike shop took off. The whole shop was closed, and all of the employees left Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday to go watch the eclipse. And so I was just scrambling to find somebody that could work on my bike. And I spent the entire day calling bike shop after bike shop, somewhere that was in drivable proximity. And I finally got a bike shop that said they could do it over the weekend. So I was great, I got that lined up. And then my bike, my Panorama, got held up in customs. So it was delayed and missed the Friday delivery and didn't arrive until Monday. And then last minute, again, the bike shop was closed. So I had to scramble around to find somebody else that could last minute help me get this S-Works full suspension bike built up, tuned in, new tires, just all this stuff. A lot of stuff I could do, I'm just busy doing other stuff, and so I didn't really have a lot of time. Well, I didn't find anybody, so I wound up doing it all myself anyway. And then, I ordered this Old Man Mountain Elkhorn rack, because everything that I own is set up for bike packing on either a hardtail or a gravel bike, and you really need racks on full suspension. Don't need them, but if you want to use a dropper post, come in super handy. So I ordered their axle pack, which is a product that mounts to your front fork. It'll work on any bike, and it gives you mounting points to carry gear on your fork, which is just a genius and a very simple product. So I ordered that, and then the Elkhorn rack to go on the back. And the Elkhorn rack was stolen off my porch on Saturday. And so, I've never had a package stolen before. I left the house at 4:45. The package was delivered at 4:49. They took a picture of the package. It was on my porch. I was back at the house by 6:15, and it was gone. And I don't have any other way to carry this gear without a rack. So then I had to get on the horn with Old Man Mountain over the weekend. Luckily, Eric from Old Man Mountain was just a fucking legend. And we were trying to figure out where he could ship a rack to, where I could pick it up on the way to the start of the AZT. And finally, he had the great idea to ship it to Campfire Cycling in Tucson, Arizona. They're a pretty major bike shop, and those guys are bike packers and can really help you, like, you know, get dialed in and get ready for the AZT. And so that was a great solution. So yesterday we, you know, I left my car at Picket Post, which is the end of the 300, and we got a shuttle ride. Shout out Tim for giving us a shuttle, but he dropped us off, or swung me by Campfire Cycling, and those guys had the rack assembled, ready to be installed, and they helped me install it, and we got it on the bike within like 10 minutes, and I was on my way. So it's pretty crazy to leave my house in Texas without a functioning bike that I could actually ride, and then scramble to get this thing put on there. And then, let's see what else happened. It's just been like one thing after another. Like, I was riding this bike, then I was riding that bike, and then I got everything set up for one bike, and then it was the other bike, and package got stolen. Oh, and then the day before I leave for the AZT on Monday, my landlord texts me and he's like, "Hey, my wife and I want to come over and talk to you," which could never be good. And he told me that they are going to be selling the house, and I'm a renter, so I have to find a new place to live. And it was just like one more sign. I'm like, God, you know, should I be staying home? Should I be, like, you know, trying to find a place to live for me and the girls? And I got a lot of shit. It's going to be a process to move, you know. Like, I've lived in this house for 2.5 years and was planning on living there for many years. It's actually in the same neighborhood that I grew up in, and it's right across the street from a park that I grew up playing in, or at as a child. So it's just a really nostalgic area for me. I really love the neighborhood. But anyway, we're moving. Found out that the day before I left. Oh, and then the other thing that happened was before East Texas Showdown, my check engine light came on in my car. And I just, you know, it was before East Texas Showdown, and then I had to go to Arkansas, and I just didn't have a chance to get it looked at. So I pulled the codes, and it was something like in the exhaust, the catalytic converter. So I finally had a mechanic come to take a look at that it was Friday of this past week. And he said it was fine to drive. So that was like another relief. Like, I was like, oh, you know, I already blew up one Subaru going to cover the Tour Divide, and I really can't afford to brick another one. So I'm like, you know, I need to be really smart here. But he said it was fine. So great. I get in the car. I'm headed this way. I'm about 5 hours into my ride, or my drive, get gas. And whenever I go back out to start the car, it goes click, 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 and all the dashboard lights were on. And I was able to get it jumped. I always carry jumper cables with me, pro tip. And I took it to an auto parts store, the next one I could find. And they tested the battery, and the battery is fine, but there was some corrosion on the battery terminals. So I got that cleaned up, hoping that was the problem and it wasn't like the starter. And then from there, my gas mileage is always like 24 miles a gallon. And I watch my fuel gauge and my mile per gallon pretty religiously. I've had that car for a couple of years, so I know exactly. All right, climb number 4 of 993. Little one, only 0.4 miles. I'll take it. Yeah, so it's real consistent with its fuel economy. And the average miles per gallon dropped from 24 miles a gallon to 16 miles per gallon. So then I'm like really concerned. And if you've ever driven through West Texas before, it's literally sometimes 200 to 300 miles between towns with nothing but barren desert in between. So it's not like you can just pop into a mechanic shop. But I was texting, so I watched it for like hours, and it kept dropping and dropping and dropping, like the fuel economy. But I wound up texting my mechanic, and he said he thought the problem was that the car was relearning the fuel efficiency, like remapping it or something, after having disconnected the battery. So I was like, all right, well, I'll just keep an eye on it. And sure enough, it took like 5 hours. But after a while, the fuel economy was reading 24 miles per gallon again. So yeah, I think I solved my car problems. I think it was the corrosion on the battery terminal, and then that ultimately caused my fuel economy to look a little weird for a while. But for a good 5 or 6 hours, I was pretty stressed about, what I need to do about my car and not wanting to blow up another one. So it was just weird because I couldn't really, my whole plan was to kind of use the drive to get in the right mental headspace. But I wasn't really able to do that because I was freaking out about my car and trying to figure out what I should do about that. So, yeah, I don't know if I left anything out. And I said I was going to make that short, but I didn't make that short. But I don't have anything else to do out here except to talk to you. So, yeah, there's just been like so many little challenges and some bigger challenges and some just fuckery that's been standing in between me and coming out here. But, I told Natalie that the thing that will make everything worth it, all the sacrifices, all the overcoming obstacles, all the stress and anxiety and tears, will be to finish it, Like, if I can finish this thing, I feel like that'll be a real victory, and I'll be proud of myself, Like, I really, Katie Scott was on the podcast. You may remember her. Go back and listen to her episode. But she wrote an article for the Town Bicycle, an online publication. And in there's a part where she talks about how like nervous and afraid, anxious, whatever she was to start. So much so that the morning of the AZT, the start, she was, thinking of ways to get out of it. Could she fake an illness? Could she, say she has a mechanical, or, what reason could she come up with to get out of doing it? And to be honest with you, it made me happy to read that, because I'm like, okay, I'm not the only one, I'm not the only one who signs up for hard things and then gets scared, and thinks about and maybe wants to get out of it. But once I wrapped my head around doing it, I made the decision. I drove home from Ozark Doom on Sunday, so like 9 days before leaving, and I was already thinking of like how I could quit, what I would say to my followers, what I would post on Instagram, etc., etc. And I knew, I had a decision to make, and I hadn't made a decision yet, but I knew that I didn't want to do it. I knew that I wasn't prepared. I haven't had the time to train or to look at the maps properly. I mean, 9 days ago, I had barely looked at the route. I had no idea what resupply options were. I mean, I hadn't done shit because I was doing all the other events. But I just made the decision Monday morning, the next day, to try, to just do my best. And once I made that decision, I was really committed to it. And even though there was still yet to be a lot of challenges that would arise between then and now, I never really lost sight of making it out here. The car stuff on the way here was really concerning, and I wasn't sure what to do about that. But you know, I've essentially am mentally committed to doing this, and I did everything I can in the last 9 days to prepare, looking at the route, getting the gear dialed, and yeah, all the things to get out here. And so I'm here now, and now the thing that'll make it all worth it is to finish it. So let's do it. It's beautiful, man. So far, let's see, let's give an update. 16 miles in, 2.5 hours, 16 miles, averaging 6.6 blistering miles an hour. Oh yeah. And so far it's all been on gravel roads, no single track yet. And I think that's it for now. That gets you caught up to speed. I was planning to record a segment on the way up here while I was driving, but I was too busy freaking out about my car to worry about it. So here we are on the AZT. Only 284 miles left, which actually isn't true. It's called the AZT 300, but I think it's like 318 miles or something like that. So I actually have like 300 miles left still. It's kind of silly. But more importantly, anytime you're doing something like this, you got to keep things in perspective and keep your focus to where you're at. So right now, today, my goals are to get to the gate. So the gate is 32 miles away, and it is almost 10 o'clock. So I got like 9 hours to go 32 miles. So I think I'm good with that. And then get to Kentucky camp tonight. So that's day one. The sun is high in the sky. There's not a cloud to be seen. But luckily it's not too hot yet. Still feels pretty good. So I will check back in later. Alright, so I just reached my very first AZT trail gate at mile 17.3, and it took me 2 hours and 36 minutes to get there. And now, oh fuck. Oh, perfect timing. And now I'm on the AZT. Holy shit. Oh, yeah. Maybe the full suspension was a good idea. Okay. Alright. I mean, that is a transition right there. I just did 17 miles of pretty smooth gravel roads. Passed through that gate, and this is full on single track with huge boulders and tree obstacles and down trees and riverbed crossings and ups and downs and outs and ins and side to side, all the good stuff. Oh man, holy shit. And my first cycle bike, all within a few minutes. Incredible. I'm glad I turned the mic on. I wish you could see this. Okay, so it's just proper single track going through these nice pine trees, kind of smaller ones. They're pretty sparse, and it's very rocky, and the trail is this red dirt, and it's nice. Anyway, This is a hiking trail. And I am walking up a hiking trail right now that is very loose with big boulders. And if this is what the whole trail is going to be like, that's going to be interesting. I mean, I knew it was a hiking trail, but I'll tell you what, that first 17 miles just like kind of lulls you to sleep. And you forget, I don't know, I was talking to you on the podcast. I was enjoying the day. Here we are. Now I see why the mile per hour average, like I've been looking at a lot of the mile per hour, like the moving speed. It seems to be pretty close, not for the fast people, but for normal people, and maybe even some. Anyway, 5 miles an hour moving speed. Now I can see why. This is kind of fun though. I mean, yeah, I'm excited. This is just completely different than what I normally do. Usually I go hiking on hiking trails and biking on roads or mountain bike specific roads. But that is not what this is. And I have a feeling that what I'm seeing right now is pretty indicative of, I think that what I'm doing right now is pretty mild, if I had to guess. So yeah, the question is, when do I hop back on this thing and ride it? Let's give it a go. Let's give it a go. That's what I mean. That's something I was thinking about. God, okay, fucking. Let's get going here. I really need my bike to be shifting well. I heard back from my mechanic and he confirmed it's the girl adjuster I need to be messing with. So I made some adjustments. I don't know if you can hear, but it's not exactly right. But I am riding. And yeah, I mean, one of the things like I'm mostly looking forward to on this ride is not pedal strikes. It's just seeing completely, new terrain, stuff I have never seen before. None of this will I've ever seen before. And not only that, but like, not a ton of people get to see this stuff unless they're willing to come out here and do this. So, not a lot of people get to experience this. And I am out here to enjoy it. And, I'm looking forward to the diversity. This is just so much different than what I normally do. So I think I just don't know what to expect. And there's some freedom in that non-expectation, because I'm not really putting pressure on myself. I don't know how afraid I should be or how worried. So I'm kind of free to probably enjoy it a little bit more with fresh eyes, and excitement and wonder and curiosity, and the entire experience is going to be full of that. And I'll never get that, I only get that this one time. Come on, baby. You can do it. Okay. Big boulders. Oh man, this is great. I love it. So yeah, it's my one and only time to see the AZT for the very first time, and that's kind of exciting. Okay, more hike-a-bike. Okay, yeah, John Schilling said
A lot of people aren't prepared for how often you have to mantle and dismantle. But that's just like a little river runoff, and real steep going in, real steep going out. So the thing with this barrel adjuster, he told me what to adjust, but he didn't tell me which way to adjust it. And I know they're sensitive, so I tried going like a few clicks one way and a few clicks another, but it didn't really get better. And yeah, so I don't know which way to turn it. And the other thing is, when you're riding, you're bouncing around, and so you're like, fuck, did I just go 3 clicks or 2 clicks or 4 clicks? How many clicks did I go? All right. Oh yeah. One thing I haven't really talked about, because I don't do much of it anymore, but I cut my teeth on mountain biking. Mountain biking is how I really fell in love with cycling. And I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I would say mountain biking is one of my strengths. And with that, I come to a very precarious part in the trail, and I clear it. Okay, that would have been fun. It was kind of a big drop off. But anyway, I'm pretty confident in my mountain biking abilities. I'm still new with this bike, but mountain biking is something that, like, I talk to a lot of people, and they didn't grow up doing it. A lot of people get into it through touring or gravel riding, and it just seems like, not as many people are getting into it through mountain biking like I did for whatever reason. But yeah, mountain biking is somewhere, even though I don't do it a ton now, I have a high level of confidence and comfortability and enjoyment. So I love a good mountain bike trail. And again, this is a hiking trail, but there's going to be some sections of this that are kind of fun. It'll be interesting to see how the body holds up to this much single track. I'm very curious to see like how giving the legs or different parts of your leg muscles a rest will potentially be a good thing. So while you might become physically and mentally fatigued, all right, where's the trail go? Where does the trail go? I see the trail. Don't you ever leave me. Oh, I completely forgot what I was saying. Oh, different. Yeah, as I become like physically and mentally fatigued from like riding, those muscles get really sore, and I'm just maybe mentally in a bad place. And there's a hiking section, and just trading for those muscles and a different mental stimulation. I'm really curious to see how that plays out. I could see the distribution being pretty like kind of equaling things out. But TBD. I try to do as much hiking and walking as I could leading into this, and physically I'm kind of probably in the best shape of my life. Like, maybe not cardiovascularly, but from fitness or muscular. I don't know how to say that. I got more muscles now. I've been hitting the weights, so I'm feeling pretty strong. Yeah, so I think I'm up for some pushing is what I'm saying. Not too much though, AZT. Not too much, just some pushing. Oh, woodpecker. Dude, this is so much fun. Oh God. Yes. I love being in the middle of nowhere. I just love being in the wilderness, and the further you get out into it, the happier I am. generally. I am wondering about how, the aloneness will wear on me over time. Oh, come on. So I love my alone time, and I'm pretty introverted. But, thinking about being out here for 5 days without really having much communication, just really being alone out here, I don't know. Could get weird. Could get lonely. Could get scary if I get too mentally fatigued. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I'm just riding through this most spectacular looking pine forest. There's actually some green grass with these huge, like, limestone boulders, I think. There's a dried up creek bed next to me, and I'm in this little riverbed area. Damn, I am in the riverbed. And I'm riding my damn bike on a riverbed in Arizona. And really thinking that full suspension was a good way to go. I mean, it is early, but god damn, I can't walk what we gotta do. All right, day 2. It is, let's see, what time is it? 7:55. Day 2, 67 miles in. I'm long overdue for an update. I meant to, do an update yesterday, but, I was just busy riding my damn bike. Was in the zone. So, let me catch you up. Yesterday, the big storyline was making the gate at 52, at mile 52. I might have mentioned it yesterday, but there is a piece of private property between mile 52 and 54 on the route. And you can't go on it during the nighttime, so you need to complete it by sunset. And before I started this ride, I was aware of that cutoff, obviously, but I mean aware of it from the sense of I kind of need to hurry and make sure I make that. I knew I would be going slow, but I wasn't overly worried. That gave me essentially 12 hours to go 54 miles. And I was like, okay, well, I could do that. Well, it turns out I can do it, but just barely. I made that gate at I think 6:45 yesterday, and the sun sets at 7 o'clock, and last light is at 7:12, and so I was really cutting it close, and I had to put in, for me, a pretty big effort to make it. Starting around noon, I was doing math. I was like, man, this is going to be pretty close. I need to, kind of hurry. So I really put my head down, focused on just moving forward. And I had very limited stopping. Yeah, I needed to poop pretty much all day, but I didn't have time to poop, so I didn't. And I probably should have stopped to take on a couple more extra calories, but I didn't. I really just had to focus on making it, and I'm really glad that I did. Yeah, that was such a huge relief yesterday when I made it through that gate. It was a big boost, because I had essentially spent 7 hours leading up to that just worrying about whether or not I was going to make it or not, and really cutting it close. So there was definitely, a good part of the day where I was like, damn, I'm not going to make this. And if you don't make it, you're just stuck at mile 54 for like 11 hours, 11 or 12 hours until sunrise. Which was earlier than I was hoping to stop at, for sure. And that's the only the only god damn it. It's the only time sensitive thing on the route. And it wound up adding a lot of pressure to my ride, and it ruined my ride, but just took a lot of my mental energy, and a lot of my thoughts and everything were surrounding that one gate. So I was really just looking forward to getting past it and just being able to go at my own pace. And if I need to take a 5-minute break to eat some food or go to the bathroom, I can do that today. So that's nice. So after I passed the gate, I was hoping to get to Kentucky camp at mile 79. So that was another 25 miles. And I like night riding. It was beautiful last night. There's a new moon, and so there's not much moonlight right now. I guess that's what it's called. It's a waxing moon. So just a little sliver of the moon was showing. But you could really see the stars so well. And it was just beautiful, and the temperatures were really nice. And I was really enjoying it. But I just started to get really tired. And my first goal was to make it to mile 79 at Kentucky camp. My second, just summited the 22nd climb out of 93 climbs. Great. My second goal was to ride until midnight and just see how far I got, because in a perfect scenario, I would have got to Kentucky camp at midnight, slept for 7 hours, and then rode into Tucson. But I just pedaled until 11:30 last night, and camping spots were really sparse. Everything was at a huge slant because we were on the side of a mountain. And so I just really started to look for basically the first place that I could camp. And I was going to make my bed and lie down in it. And so that's what I did. I set up still on a hillside, at a little bit of an angle. And I don't think I'll make that mistake again, because that was not ideal. It was one of those nights where I don't even remember if I fell asleep or not. I just feel like I tossed and turned the whole night. But I did cowboy camp. Got to look at the stars for a little while before I closed my eyes. And, really enjoyed just laying down after, how many hours was that? almost 17 hours on the bike, like 16 and a half hours a day. It was nice to lay down. And now we're riding. And one good thing about making it to Kentucky camp is it's a kind of a decent push getting up there. This last 12, 13 miles is looks to be mostly going uphill. And camping at, I think, the highest point so far on the race, or the campsites there. I probably won't be camping there unless something really goes wrong. The nice thing about making it there is you would have started at this really nice elevation, and then it's mostly downhill or a net elevation loss going into Tucson. But instead, I get to start my day with 12 miles of going up. But with that said, I'm currently on this really nice downhill segment. This first day of the morning, it's only 8:10, and this trail has been freshly bench cut. It's just nice rolling, easy riding up at 5,300 feet elevation with views of the valley and the mountains. And it's a good reminder of why I'm out here. I will say that's been one of the biggest takeaways so far of this ride, is just how beautiful it is. And, you know, even whenever it's challenging, it's hard to ignore the beauty and how special it is and unique to be able to, like, ride it or be out here, you know. Like, I'm 65 or so miles into the Arizona Trail, and not many people are going to just come out here. So there's not many people in the world, like, I don't know what the numbers are, but there's just not a lot of people that are going to get an opportunity to see this. Oh, and it's worth seeing. So far I've had a really good, like, been in a good mental headspace, and oh my gosh, this trail, this view is just insane. Oh God. Oh, everybody should come and ride this and have a morning just like this. This is fucking living right here. Mostly, I would say it's been mostly enjoyable. Like, the climbs are I call them climbs, I mean, they're hike-a-bikes. Like, every time you're going uphill, maybe not every time, but there's a lot of hike-a-bike, and everybody says that. But it feels like 50% hiking and 50% biking. And in some ways that's nice, but just to mix up the muscles and go at a different speed. But it's hard. I'm really struggling on the hike-a-bikes. They are definitely kicking my ass. But the nice thing is, every single hike-a-bike is followed by just amazing single track. And when I say amazing, I should clarify this or quantify it. Like the trail I'm on right now is just perfectly purpose-built. I feel like, I mean, it's wider, it's flatter. There's not a bunch of loose rocks and boulders. Anyway, it's very well groomed and very nice, and has an amazing flow to it. But a lot of day one, like 90% of day one, was very technical, very challenging riding. I loved it. As a person who, like, grew up mountain biking, I love technical mountain biking like that, where I kind of feel like I get to flex my skills a little bit and push the line. I definitely pushed it to the limit many times. I went down once pretty hard, and I just passed my very first AZT gate that you could roll over. So I went down once really hard, and there was several times where one time the bike just slid out from underneath me, and I feel like I was inches from the ground, but I stayed on the pedals and just rode it out. And I know it wasn't inches, but I mean, it just felt like I was millimeters from just eating shit. And the bike just happened to hook up, and I kept it going. And, you know, you're doing technical stuff at 20 plus miles an hour. Big boulders, loose rocks, big rocks, small rocks, cactuses on every side, death. I mean, right now there's just a huge drop off to my side. Oh, I love this. You can see the entire trail. Gotta get a photo. Man, this trail right now is just insane. I was really mentally preparing for a hard push first thing this morning. But I'm so glad I stopped when I did. I would have missed this whole section. It would have been dark, and I would have had no idea when I was riding through. And honestly, like, it makes me wonder what I missed last night, because I mean, you know, you only have your headlamps, and I could just see mountain face to my left and sheer drops down to my right, but I have no idea how deep they were or anything. I don't know what kind of views I missed, and that's one of the reasons why I'm trying to do most of my riding in the daylight and just, you know, deal with the heat. And yesterday, like, the heat, it was supposed to be the hottest day of the whole trip at 90, and then like 90 or 91, and then today it's supposed to get up to like 88, so slightly cooler. But I feel like I managed the heat yesterday pretty well. Covering all my skin. I got these sun leg covers that I'm so glad I got. I think I bought them for like $8 on Amazon, and they are just, I haven't taken them off yet. During the day, they're blocking the sun, or just some of it. And it also locks in some moisture, so when the wind blows, you get a little sauna. And I'm wearing this very lightweight shirt. It's made, I can't remember the name of the company, and I'm not going to look right now. It starts with a K. But it's a really nice shirt. It was not an $8 Walmart or Amazon purchase. But, and I've got the hood on. And I stopped once in a stream and got them wet and put them on. Really in the middle of the day, it was like 1 or 2 o'clock. And it was a good idea. So yeah, I just drank lots of water. I mean, I brought 6.5 liters, and I did get some water out of a stream. The water is really flowing right now. I mean, the stream was loud. It was just roaring. So I got some water there, but I haven't filtered it yet. It's just backup water. I have, I think, about 2 liters. And there's a spigot at Kentucky Camp. Fuck, man, these trails are no joke. Oh, God. You gotta really pay attention. Especially yesterday. Because you're going 20 plus miles an hour and having to make split-second decision on some really gnarly, I mean, a lot of the trail is black or double black. They are just absolutely gnarly. But I was letting it rip, man. I was taking so many chances, just fucking sending it. I tacked some stuff that, like, probably bigger than anything I've ever done. Just big boulders and riverbed crossings where there's like 10 different routes and you just try to pick the best one. But I'm just fucking sending it on the single track. We'll see how aggressive I am today. I'm feeling good, better than I thought I was going to. When I stopped yesterday, I was fucking spent. My hands were just shooting with pain and just everything hurt. My stomach had indigestion. So I was just, I don't know, I just didn't feel good. At one point, yesterday, I laid in the middle of the trail for like 5 minutes and just looked up at the stars and tried to take like a little 5-minute cat nap type thing. I always hear people talking about that, but my body was tired, but my mind was not. So I was trying to push through, kinda. I wanted to see, I wanted to make sure I was done. I didn't want to just stop. So I kind of did a test run, and I went, like after that, I kept going for like, I don't remember, probably another hour or so. Oh, that's what I wanted to say. I keep going back to the mountain biking, and I'm getting distracted from my kind of main point, which is that I am super happy with the bike I'm on. There is no way I would have been able to ride as aggressively yesterday without this bike. There were so many times yesterday I was just grinning ear to ear, just having a time of my life, enjoying the scenery and like hitting some just epic single track. So yeah, I hate the bikes were hard, but the single track was worth it. It beats you up though. It's not easy riding. Even though it's fun, man. It's you gotta be mentally paying attention and just engaged with your body. Everything engaged everywhere. Whew. Yeah, I don't feel amazing. Yeah. Alright, I got a climb coming up. I think I'm gonna focus, get my head in the game. Good morning. Morning of day 3. It is 8:17, and I have gone. I just looked it up. I should know this. Oh yeah, 112 miles. And my target for this morning is the cafe. Oh yeah, the Colossal Cave Cafe. I think the cafe is actually called the Terrace Cafe, but it's at Colossal Cave or Colossal something. Whoa. We were definitely getting close to town. That is the third hardcore mountain biker I've seen out here this morning so far. And besides yesterday, here's another one coming up. Yeah, I'm getting close to civilization. People are such. That guy had his ACDC going. I've seen a couple of e-bikes and a couple of regular bikes. I'll keep you posted. But yeah, totally different vibe than the first 2 days where you don't see anybody. I haven't been doing as good of a job updating on here as I had intended to. Yesterday was an absolute ass kicker. Absolute ass kicker. I think it's called the Canelo Hills. And I remember also our shuttle driver, Tim, we were driving down I-10. The trail goes underneath I-10. I'm actually coming up to it here in a mile or two. And he said the
this section over here to the west, the section I just did yesterday, is really hard. But then it gets really good on the other side of I-10. And I have to say, yesterday was just so hard. Quick recap. Day one, first 17 miles were gravel. Kind of psychs you out as to what you're actually going to be doing before too long. And then you hit I think that first gate came at mile 17, if I remember correctly. And then it's full on single track. And I thought day one was hard. I thought that single track was hard. I mean, I would rate it all. I mean, there was a tiny bit of blue, but most of it was black and double black. Trails built for hikers. So you're taking just these crazy descents, taking high-end risk, leaping over boulders with small rocks that could fucking, if you land wrong, they'll just wipe your bike right out from underneath you. And that happened more times than I can count, but I always kept it upright. Oh, wait, except for that one time, that's exactly what happened. There were two boulders on either side of the trail on a right-hand turn, and I kind of shimmied around them, did an awkward kind of bunny hop thing around them, and then my front tire landed on a medium-sized round rock on the other side, and just my front wheel just spit out from underneath me. And I landed pretty hard, but luckily no injuries, and the bike was fine. It was just kind of a thud. So I thought day one was going to be a pretty good idea of what the overall vibe was going to be, and it really put me into again, the trail psyched me out for going into day two, because essentially yesterday I started the morning with I think total 12 miles of going up to this highest point, at which point you descend down about 3,000 feet in elevation over a 45-mile stretch going down into Tucson. So if you look at it, it's okay, I just got to make it to this high point, and then I'm going to have nice downhill, flowy single track. Maybe not flowy, but just, it's mostly going downhill, Well, it turns out, that first 12 miles was, firstly, that was just really hard. It's, people talk about hike-a-bikes, but this isn't exactly what I was imagining. And I'll try to describe, I felt because people just say, oh, that's hard, but what does hard actually mean? So, picture pushing your bike up a single track trail that's just very rocky on top of a hard surface. So most of the surface is this red, hard dirt, this clay. And I mean, right now is a good example. I mean, there's tiny little pebbles, medium-sized ones, boulders, and you're pushing your bike up this at anywhere from a 15 to a 25% grade. At one point, my bike computer clocked a 30% grade that you're pushing your bike up. And when you're trying to make your way up this trail, I mean, one, you're holding your bike weight up that weighs, 50 whatever pounds in some awkward position, and you're at elevation so you can't breathe, so you're sucking downwind. And then you take a step, and your step immediately slides backwards. And you step with your other foot, and that foot hits a rock and kind of spins out. And then you stand there for a second, and you hold your breath, and you try again. And sometimes it works, and sometimes you just start the whole stupid process over again. And that was just to go 4 or 5 inches up this steep ascent. And that is a good representation of what you're doing for at least half of the time that you're on the Arizona Trail. So that hike-a-bike of 12 miles of first 12 miles of the day yesterday just included a bunch of hike-a-bike, and I think it took me 3 or 4 hours to go 12 miles. But the whole time I was thinking, okay, from here everything's downhill into Tucson. So I mean, it was hard, but mentally, like, I really, stayed in it. Yesterday was also hotter for some reason. Maybe, I don't know exactly why, but it was definitely hotter yesterday, or I'm feeling the effects more. And of course, my body's sore and everything. So yesterday was just, everything was harder yesterday. And I don't think it's just that my body and things are starting to wear down that made that things were harder. Yesterday actually was harder. So it started with that 12 miles up. The whole time mentally I'm like, all right, no problem. I'm going to have pretty much all downhill to Tucson. So I was still mentally prepared and thinking that I'd be making it to Tucson yesterday night. I thought it might be later than expected, maybe by midnight or so, but I was thinking, hey, you can do this. And then I got into what I believe are the Canelos, and I'm trying to think of how to fucking tell you what those are, but here's what it was. The trails were so much more difficult than before on day one. Like day one, I thought they were all black, double black. Day two, the trail conditions were way worse. There were way fewer smooth sections of trails. There was way fewer better transitions and stuff. I mean, it was just gnarlier, way gnarlier. And Arizona hikers and bikers, that's me. Let's go under I-10. Here we go. Some milestones, kind of cool. We get a rolly gate this time. Golly, this looks like not copperhead. What do I have here? Rattlesnakes. Oh man, this is cool. All right, I had to take a break. If you know the AZT, when you pass underneath I-10, there's this really cool mural. What would you call it? Like under the bridge, or I'm trying to think about how to describe it. My brain isn't working very well. Weird. If you're looking at the bridge that supports I-10, like right now I'm walking in a riverbed, so water passes underneath this bridge. Someone has painted a rattlesnake mural on the bridge, and it's just super cool looking. So I had to stop and take a picture with my bike. So yeah, yesterday I went in mentally thinking one thing, and the AZT once again punched me in the face. And that reminds me of that Mike Tyson quote, that everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, and the AZT just keeps punching me on the fucking face. But usually the thing is, like on day one, all the face punches had major payoffs with just these beautiful views and pretty sick single track. Technically demanding and challenging, but still, really awesome. And then yesterday, you kept working really hard for these hike-a-bikes to get to the top. And then without fail, time and time again, the descent was sometimes too steep or too technical to ride. Or if it was rideable, it was just super gnarly. It just absolutely rocked you from head to toe. I mean, so it didn't matter if you were going up or going down yesterday. you were getting punched in the face almost without fail, almost without exception. And I'm really not trying to complain. I really am enjoying all this. I'm enjoying pushing myself and, trying something hard, man. Like, I always say on the podcast, there's only one way to find out, and that's to come out here and do it. And I'm enjoying the finding out process, but something I'm always like super interested in is like people say, oh, it's hard. But like, what does hard mean? So I can only give you my perspective, but I am trying to, paint a pretty clear picture of at least what I'm going through and my perceptions of the trail. So yeah, yesterday was hard all day long until, somewhere really close to sunset, like around 6:30 or so, like right after mile 100. And it was starting to get dark, so I couldn't really see, but the trail just became way more rideable. And then last night, I had decided to camp at mile 109, just because I was so tired, so beat up. And also, there's a cafe that opens, I mentioned that, the Terrace whatever cafe, that opens at 9 a.m. and that's at mile 121. So like last night I had a choice. I could either go to sleep early and then wake up and ride to breakfast, or last night ride all the way to mile 121 and then sleep until 8:30 or so, and then wake up whenever they open at 9. So it kind of, because I knew I was going to stop there, it didn't really matter when I camped. It was a pretty easy choice. Like, I was so beat up and tired, and it was so hot, and I was just drained, and everything hurt, and I had a headache, and my tummy didn't feel good, and just everything. My body was really rejecting what I had done that day. And so I got to camp about 8:30. It was kind of nice to get set up early, and I almost said get a good night's sleep, but that reminds me of the next eventful thing that happened. I think I went to bed. I think I finally fell asleep. I was listening to an audiobook because I wasn't quite like mentally tired yet, which was another indication I could have kept going, but I really didn't have any big reason to. But I think I fell asleep around 10:30. I woke up at 2 o'clock thinking that I was going to say my mattress, but it's actually Natalie's mattress. Her air mattress was feeling a little flat. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll wait a little while till it gets more flat, and then I'll have to get out of the stupid bivvy and air it up. Well, that thing was almost completely flat within a couple minutes. So I got out, hoping that it was just like the valve not being shut, aired it up, and immediately it started to lose air. So essentially, I slept on the dirt from 2 a.m. until 7 a.m. when I woke up. And it was pretty crazy. I mean, it's like a rocky, hard surface out here in the desert. And I remember thinking to myself, I wonder if I can sleep out here like this. And I did. I was so tired. I mean, it wasn't comfortable, but I actually slept. It looks like I might be buying her a new air mattress. So, anyway, sorry, Natalie. That air mattress provided me with 1.5 nights of sleep. And I'm coming up to some hikers, so I'm going to... Alright, so anyway, air mattress deflated, slept on the dirt, woke up this morning, feeling pretty okay. Like, one thing that's really amazing is how much things can hurt yesterday, how you can wake up the next day, and I mean, my hands still hurt and my butt still hurts and stuff, but like, I've been really impressed with how my body's like holding up overall to this, because this is by far the hardest thing I have ever done by a long shot. And I think that I do some hard things from time to time, but this is just next level. And yeah, big question marks throughout this whole thing as to how I'm going to deal with and to manage whatever comes up, and mentally and physically, like, not too bad. I'll give myself a B. Part of my strategy is just going slow, man. I don't have as many matches as some of these people out here, and so I'm taking it slow, but that was part of my strategy to get through this, is pro slow. You can always go slower. You can always go slower. You can turn the pedal slower. You can get off the walk. You can sit down for a few minutes. You can take a nap. You can always go slower. And that was one of my thoughts going into this, and one of my keys to victory. And so I'm not setting records out here, but I'm getting it done, man. And like, it's pretty cool to, man, just be out here in this crazy, rugged, super remote environment, harsh landscape with beautiful views, and just getting to be out here. And the only way you're going to get out here is through, the power of yourself, your own human power system. And so, yeah, man, it's just being able to do that, being able to be out here because my body is allowing me to be out here. It's cool, and I'm really happy that I have that. I want to be able to enjoy this body as long as I can. See more, do more. Oh, we're coming up to something here. Oh, a porta potty. Oh man, that was luxury. This morning I was about to poop in the woods. Don't worry, I brought all the right stuff. But yeah, right when I was about to go, I saw a porta potty out by the road, and it was a nice one too. Like, as far as porta potties go, this is like an official gate. This is where all the mountain bikers are starting from. Gabe Zimmerman, Davidson Canyon Trailhead. And I might be off course. I'm not off course. I am the course. Unless I am off course. Of course. This morning has been absolutely amazing. Yesterday, it's funny, like, when I checked in yesterday morning, I was on Arizona Trail bicycle bypass. Okay. And I am bypassing, I guess, a wilderness area. Yeah, yesterday started with some perfectly groomed bench cut single track, and I actually met the trail steward in the middle of fucking nowhere. He was out there fixing a gate that was crossing the stream. It was just a really idyllic little, oh, you had to see it. It was just so pretty. And he was out there, just quintessential cowboy, out there with all of his tools, fixing his fence. And he chatted me up for a little bit and was like, asked me if I remember the section, and he was talking about that that section of single track. He's like, yeah, I'm the trail steward for that. He's like, pretty nice, huh? We just got that, we just built that. So I got to meet the guy that was partially responsible for making that happen. So thank you, stranger. I thanked him in person, but man, that was nice. And then yesterday got really hard. And this morning is starting out with just great single track, like almost 100% rideable. All right, where are we going? And then our first, holy shit. Is this really happening? I'm on a goddamn fucking road. I haven't been on one of these. The last time I was on, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. The last time I was on a road was back in Arkansas. I'm passing over a bridge that is going over a railroad that is winding through this scenic Arizona landscape. And I think my road days are over. My roadie days are done. You hear that? That's gravel. So that's Seneca Creek. Really pretty. Yeah, today is kind of what I was thinking yesterday was going to be like. Arizona National Scenic Trail. I'll give them that. It is scenic. So, let's shift gears here a little bit and talk about one of my mental strategies that I employ whenever I'm going on longer rides, and especially one like this, is as far as my navigational equipment on my Wahoo, I don't have the miles and the miles per hour and all that pulled up. All I have is the little arrow on the map telling me where to go and a little elevation profile at the bottom. And normally I have a heart rate monitor, but that died on day one, which is super sad. I just like to know. I like to have that data when I'm done. I'd be super curious how many calories I burnt. But oh well. I also can't monitor my heart rate in real time. But honestly, like, I have a pretty good feel for my heart rate. I don't really need a monitor to tell me. It's more just for fun afterwards to look at how tough it was. And holy fucking shit. I am so happy to tell you, and to tell me, that I am in the saguaros. I just came around this bend, and there's like 50 of them, and they're easily probably my favorite cactus. You guys are fucking awesome. They're always like waving at you. They look so friendly. Yeah, so I just don't even worry about the fucking numbers. I mean, I do a little bit. Obviously, I click in and check on them periodically, but I don't want to be looking at them every second, especially going as slow as I was yesterday. So that was one little thing. I'm also just trying to stay present, not worry about the future. Just be here now. Can I keep going? Yes. I think that's the question that I ask myself and answer all the time. Can I keep going right now? Can I keep going? Yes. There's a part of me that's so excited to sit down at a restaurant and order some food and drink cold water and a Coke, maybe a coffee, anything I want. There's a part of me that's looking forward to that. But there's a part of it that's a little sad. I've been out here. Today's the start of day 3, so 2 full days on my own, relying only on myself for anything and everything. And it's been sucking hard. It's been the hardest thing I've ever done so far. I'm sure it'll get easier after this. But yeah, it's just it's such a cool feeling to be able to rely on yourself, and I don't mind saying that I've been impressed with myself and proud of myself for managing everything up to this point. Especially with like how scrambled everything was at the end to put everything together just to get out here. Yeah, so everything's going kind of well. Haven't had any major issues or anything, you know. A lot of close calls. I feel like the Arizona Trail is taking me to my limit, right on the edge. But you know, no major issues. I can do this. All right. I'm gonna ride my damn bike.
All right. Well, I am back in Texas after making the drive of shame after my AZT attempt. Just kidding. No shame here, but if you were following along, you'll know that I didn't quite complete the AZT 300, and we can get into all the details, I guess, starting now. So I'm going to catch you up to speed, give you a rundown of everything that happened after I stopped recording on the trail, and just take you through some of the highlights of my ride and what led up to me ultimately calling it in Tucson. Where I left off was on day 3, and I was heading to mile 121 at Colossal Cave to get some food, which is the first resupply point on the 300-mile route. And I got to Colossal Cave about 11:30, but I do want to make one note here real quick about getting to Colossal Cave for anybody else who's looking at doing this route and stopping at Colossal Cave. So if you're riding the route, you come over a ridge and you see this like horse corral, this kind of like dude ranch thing sitting down below you at the bottom of the mountain. And I was looking at the map and looking at the thing down below me, and I couldn't quite tell how to access it. And so I didn't want to miss my turn. So I made the decision to just go ahead and descend all the way down the mountain to see if the buildings that I was looking at were Colossal Cave. And it turns out that it wasn't. I had to ride another like 1.2 miles or so up a road to get to Colossal Cave. So just a note there, like if anybody else is doing this route, you're going to come up over a ridge, you're going to see this group of buildings at the bottom of the mountain, and you may, like me, think, hey, is that it? And go ahead and descend. If you actually just keep going down the trail for a little bit longer, there's going to be another trail that heads west that will access the Colossal Cave Cafe a little bit more directly, and will get you back on route a little bit more quickly. So just a pro tip for anybody else who's going to be doing it. I definitely messed that up. And one other quick note about getting to Colossal Cave is it is a punchy little climb to get up there. So there's another resupply point at mile 137 at Rocking K Market. So if you're not feeling like doing another climb, you might skip Colossal Cave and just head on down the road to Rocking K. But anyway, I did stop at Colossal Cave, and it was pretty interesting experience because I'd been in the desert wilderness for 2.5 days at this point. Really hadn't seen any other humans other than a few hikers. and had only very brief interactions with anybody at this point. No stores, no nothing, just the desert wilderness for company. And the Colossal Cave is a pretty popular tourist destination, and they have a little food kiosk there. They don't have like a full menu with, a full kitchen or anything. But they did have, plenty of food and drinks and everything that I could have asked for. So I grabbed my food, which was at this time a breakfast sandwich with some tater tots, a Coke, and a water. And I sat down on the terrace. It had beautiful views of the desert landscape. But the whole time there was anywhere from 40 to 50 people there waiting to go on a cave tour. And people were taking selfies and laughing and having a good time, which is all great. Nothing wrong with any of that. It was just a really interesting transition to go from being, somewhat completely isolated from the world and just walk into like this kind of abrupt and shocking social dynamic. And I'm socially awkward anyway. And so I was just like, oh, get me out of here kind of. But of course, no offense to any of those people. They're allowed to be wherever they want to be. It was just kind of awkward transition. And I feel like that so frequently when I go on these trips, and I wonder if other people do as well. I prefer to be out in the wilderness, out in the woods, away from people. That's kind of my happy place. That's where I feel the most comfortable. So anytime, even if I go into a gas station or just as I'm reintegrating into society after a trip, I always find that that transition to be a little bit jarring. So that's just something that stands out to me. While I was there, there was actually some real drama because I was just sitting there enjoying my breakfast sandwich, and a bunch of paramedics came with the stretcher and all the medical equipment. And apparently down on the trail, a hiker had fallen and injured her leg. I don't know the extent of her injuries, but so the whole time I was sitting there eating my sandwich, there was all this commotion going on with emergency evac from the hiking trail that was down below. And I just, it was just kind of a reminder of how treacherous this landscape is and how rugged it is and how there were real consequences for injury out there. And I was sitting there, I was just reflecting on my own experience about how really kind of lucky I had been. I'd like to chalk some of it up to some good bike handling skills, but I also definitely have to chalk some of it up to just sheer luck. Again, I can't overstate it enough. That trail is just absolutely gnarly. It's super rugged. It is not graded for mountain biking at all. And you just really have to have your head in the game and say a freaking prayer and just hope that you don't go down. And the consequences out there are real, I mean, the result of a crash could easily be injury and potentially a serious injury, and you are out in the middle of nowhere. And for me, I have a goal in life of never hitting that SOS button on the GPS device. Of course, if I need to, I will, but the whole point of going out there is to do it solo, self-supported, to get yourself in, to get yourself out, and to do so safely. So it is, I guess, a point of pride and also a point of just being a responsible outdoors person to go into environments where you are able to handle yourself appropriately and to extract yourself out safely. And again, I would hit that SOS button in a heartbeat if I really needed to, but I really, one of my goals in life is to never put myself in a situation where I have to hit that button. But if I'm being completely honest, I could have easily found myself in a situation where I had to hit the SOS button if I had sustained injury, and injury is a potential out there. Like, it's a high risk with high reward situation, but that also comes with high consequences. So you got to take all that into consideration. Ultimately, I got off the course pretty well unscathed, but we'll get into all my woes here in a little bit. So after leaving Colossal Cave, it warmed up significantly. The trail immediately after Colossal Cave was just brutally hot and rugged, and I really expected to come off of eating all that food and rehydrating, feeling pretty good, and it shocked me that like 30 minutes after leaving Colossal Cave, I was already looking for a place to seek shelter and just get out of the sun, even just a little bit. But that section right after offered no shade. But not too long after that, it really opened up to some really nice single track. And I guess I should mention here also that after Colossal Cave, at about mile 127, I went off route. There is an updated map that keeps you from going into the Saguaro National Park. And so at mile 127, it forks off to the west or the left-hand side. And I really thought that I had the most current route. I didn't find out that I went off route until after I was done with my ride. But I did miss like a few miles of the trail there. And the trail I took was from an old route file, apparently. And it took me up into the Saguaro National Park, which was actually really beautiful. But for the group start in October, it's super important that nobody goes into the Saguaro National Park. I talked to John Schilling about it, and it's not like a huge deal for an ITT, but I can just say that it was never my intention to get off route. The route file that I had showed me going to the Saguaro National Park. That's what I followed. I found out later that I was off course. And it's super important to me that as cyclists, we, follow the rules, follow the route, and make sure we stay on course because, for example, we just don't want Saguaro National Park to get upset at the cyclists. And if they see too many people doing what I did, they might put a kibosh on the whole thing, which would not be cool. So just a note there, make sure your route files are up to date. Learn from my mistakes. I know that I will, but I did miss a little section of the Arizona Trail. So the best place to get the newest route file is at AZT300-800.com. I thought that's where I got my route file from, but I honestly don't remember where I got it. Things were so crazy getting ready to just get out here. I obviously made a mistake, so that's my bad. But again, hopefully we can all learn from my mistake and make sure we have updated route files. So from there, that pretty much ends the single track portion of the ride, at least heading into Tucson. At about mile 134 on the route, you hit pavement, and this gets you into the outskirts of Tucson. And at mile 137, you come to your next resupply point, which is the Rocking K Market, which is somewhat infamous on the Arizona Trail. Mostly, I think, just because it's a resupply point and there aren't many of them up to this point. The Rocking K was a little bit of an experience. I walked in and it was, again, I can't overstate it enough. It was just getting brutally hot. I was really at this point starting to struggle. I was having a really hard time accessing any power, any energy systems. I was just feeling fatigued and drained and overheated. And so the only thing I could think of at this point was ice cream, Coca-Cola, water. And so that's what I went in. That's what I got. I think I got an ice cream sandwich, a Coke, and a water. I went and sat on the porch, and I had my next interesting social interaction with the locals or the patrons of the Rocking K Market. So I sat on the porch, and they were blaring some music, just like overly loud. And at one point, this like old cowboy dude was like, "Hey man, y'all ever heard of Funky Cold Medea? Yeah, it's like this rap song." And so he's just like persistent that they put on Funky Cold Medea and convinces the guy doing the music to put it on, and they crank it up even louder. And before I know it, I'm watching a full-blown dance party in the parking lot of the Rocking K Market with like 20 people just getting down to Funky Comedia. So it's quite, again, like the shock to the system. I'm just sitting there in this chair, like on the verge of death. I'm exaggerating, but I was struggling, I was struggling. I was just trying to regroup and get a little rest, cool my body temperature down, get some fluids, get some food in me, and just kind of get back to a place where I felt like I could keep going. At this point, I had already booked a hotel. I guess I should have mentioned that when I was at Colossal Cave, I got on Google, found the cheapest hotel I could, and went ahead and booked that. So I had a destination in mind, and it was always my plan to get a hotel in Tucson. That was supposed to be my only hotel of the ride. I was planning on getting there an entire day earlier, but nevertheless, that was my plan. So from Rocking K to my hotel, I only had 16 miles left, all on pavement for that day. But at that stage, 16 miles to me felt like a lot. And, at this point, it was probably around 1 or 2 o'clock, and it was the full heat of the day. The heat was bouncing off the pavement. It had just, it was just starting to get into like a pressure cooker situation. While I was sitting at Rocking K, I briefly considered calling an Uber XL to come and get me and take me the rest of the 16 miles. I mean, that's how like drained I was. But I didn't, I just recouped there, enjoyed the sideshow of watching the locals dance to Funky Comedia. And then I set out on the road at a very slow pace and wound my way through Tucson. One good thing about Tucson, I mean, at least compared to where I live, is there's pretty darn good infrastructure for walking and cycling. At one point, I got to ride along. They have a really nice bike path and walking path that goes by a like drainage area. And from what I understand, it goes around the entire town. And so I was on that for like 5 or 6 miles. And for anyone else who might be considering getting a hotel in Tucson, money for me was a big consideration. So I was definitely trying to find like the cheapest hotel I could afford, but also like one that, was not too bad, to put it politely. And so to get to those hotels, you have to go pretty far off course. Like I think it was a good 8 or 9 miles off of the Arizona Trail to, further west to get to those hotels. There was some options closer to the route, but they were considerably more expensive, like twice the price. So that just wasn't in my budget. So just a pro tip for anybody else who's looking at going and potentially staying in Tucson. It might add like 16 miles onto your ride if you're looking for like some of the better option hotels. And just another consideration for anybody else who's thinking about doing the Arizona Trail. So I got to the hotel about 5:30 and was so happy to be there, feeling just really drained, really overheated, but still like in a pretty good headspace. I mentioned it earlier in the episode, but one of my tricks for this ride was to stay present. And I think that's something that can be very easy to say, but very hard to do. It's really easy, especially when things are hard, to start thinking about the future and like, oh no, can I do this? And can my body hold up? And, oh fuck, this is hard. And I don't know if I want to do this anymore. I'm not sure I'm having fun. Whatever the thoughts that are racing through your mind might be telling you. But for me, like one of the promises that I made myself is that I would just stay present and I wouldn't tap out or call it too soon. If I felt like I couldn't keep going, I was going to stop and take a nap or sleep and try to recover before deciding to quit. So at the hotel that night, that was still my mentality. there was definitely the thought on my mind that this could possibly be the end of my ride. I was very aware of the fact that I was, physically really run down. I was overheated and not feeling well. And I was concerned about going forward, but I didn't want those concerns to take the front seat. So I went into that evening preparing and planning to ride the next day. I had an air mattress that had a huge gash in it that I had to repair. I did laundry. I charged all my batteries. I got food and water and resupplied, and just did all of the things to set myself up to be able to ride the next morning. So I went to bed that night, got to bed early. I got to the hotel at like 5:30 that day. So I was able to get to bed pretty early that night. And all night I was waking up throughout the middle of the night with just like a raging headache and really bad nausea. And I really thought I was going to throw up. Like, I'm actually still surprised that I didn't. But I actually made it through the whole night without throwing up, just extreme nausea and a headache. Woke up still feeling nauseous with a headache. I was coughing up blood, not a lot of blood, but, and I don't think it was like deep down in my lungs. I just think it was just so dry there. Like my throat was just cracked and dried out from how dry it was there. That's what I think it was. And also I was just so fatigued, and it started to click with me that I was experiencing some heat-related symptoms from either heat stroke or heat exhaustion. And I Googled it, and I'm no doctor, but I think that I was experiencing a heat stroke. And I'm no stranger to heat-related illnesses. I've lived in Texas my whole life. The first time I got a heat stroke, I was 12. I remember it vividly. Actually, our Boy Scout troop rode 19 miles during the summer to a Boy Scout camp that was like 19 miles away from my town. We camped there and then rode back the next day. We didn't carry all of our gear, so it wasn't a proper bikepacking trip. But I remember whenever I got done with that, I was like throwing up on the church lawn and just really not well. And it took me a while to recover from that one. And I think that's just been a theme of my life. Like, I don't think that I handle the heat well. And one thing that I understand about heat-related illnesses is, like, once you've had one, you're more susceptible to getting them again. And so I really wonder if that one that I got at age 12 kind of like fucked me up forever, but I'm not really sure. I just know that I wasn't feeling well and having all these really serious conditions as a result of being in the sun, and also just the physical exertion up to that point. And I woke up, I was like, I'm done. I am so done. I mean, for safety reasons, for physical reasons, for mental reasons, like I was just like, okay, I was planning to hopefully want to feel better whenever I woke up today. And that's what had happened every day prior to this. Like when I woke up on the second day, I went to bed the day before feeling absolutely shelled, got a decent night's sleep, woke up and feeling pretty good. I'm like, every morning I woke up, well, after the first 2 nights, I woke up feeling like, oh, wow, yeah, I actually feel better than I thought that I would. So I was really hoping on that third night, after that third night when I woke up, that I would have a similar experience. But that's not what happened. I was not just shelled, but I was sick. I was feeling very ill. So a good strategy in these scenarios is to have a friend or family member or somebody that you can call to kind of bounce ideas off of before you quit. And so I called Natalie, and when I was talking to her, it became even more apparent that I was a little bit deeper into the heat stroke than I realized, because when I was talking to her, I could barely complete a sentence. Like, I couldn't get the words to come out of my mouth right. I was like mumbling and stumbling over my words, and I had like memory loss. Like, I just couldn't remember what we had just talked about, and I was confused. And then I was like, okay, this is kind of getting to a point where this is like scary and potentially dangerous. But it's good to have somebody who's not in a mentally bad and physically bad shape to like bounce ideas off of. And Natalie's like, she's a super tough person. Quit is not in her vocabulary, and that's a great tool. So, we talked it through, and she recommended that I lean even more into the goal that I had started out with of waiting before I called it. And, when I talked to her, I think it was like 8:30 in the morning. My options at that point were to call it there or to stay in a hotel one more night and hopefully wake up the next day feeling better. So she was like, go to breakfast, get some food, think about your options, think about how you feel, see if you start feeling better. And I thought that was a really good idea. So right across the street was an IHOP. I went over there and got a huge breakfast, got some coffee, and considered all my options. And the options that I was considering at that point were 100% I was going to stay in the hotel one more night. Like there was just no way. It wasn't smart at that point. I knew enough to know that going back out into that environment, into that heat, into that remoteness would be an ill-advised thing to do for me at that time. Again, alluding back to what I said just a little while ago about, it's your duty and responsibility as an outdoors person to kind of manage yourself and not be a burden on our emergency rescue system. There's just no way that it made sense for me to head back out on the trail that day. So no matter what, I was definitely going to stay in the hotel one more day and recuperate. And then from there, I had what I thought were two options. One, keep going down on the trail, or two, create a new route and ride back to the car, still get back to my car under human powered. And so while I was sitting there at breakfast, I created a new route that was about 140 miles long and would be on I-10 for like 40 or 50 miles, which really didn't appeal to me a whole lot, like the idea of riding on I-10, but it did appeal to me to get off of the route and back to my car under my own human power. Like that was super appealing to me. And that is kind of the direction that I was leaning in. So I got back from breakfast, went back to the hotel, and I was texting with John Schilling, giving him an update on what I was thinking about doing. And he messaged me and he was like, oh, I'm about to go to Picket Post. Gregg is about to finish, so I'm going to go there and welcome him in and congratulate him and stuff. And when he said that, I hadn't even considered that option, and it hadn't occurred to me that Gregg was about to finish. I was kind of just in my own world, managing my own life. And when John said that to me, I actually got pretty emotional and was overcome with this sense that I wanted to be there at the finish line when Gregg finished. I also wanted to be there when Alan finished and Ian finished, but Gregg was the one that was finishing next. And when he said that, I was just like overcome with all these emotions, and it's hard to describe, but it just felt so important to me. Like I invited these people out there. This was kind of my gig. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to continue. And even if I was, it looked like I was going to take an alternate route and not take the Arizona Trail back. I was just going to, do my own ride. And the reason that I landed on doing my own human powered ride, or the thought that I would do that, is because of timing. I had a hard deadline to go back and get my girls. And so if I had stayed in the hotel one more day, I only would have had 2 days to finish the rest of the 300. And that just, from everything that I had seen up to that point with my own physical abilities and how fast or how slow I was going, wasn't feasible. And so I was like, all right, well, maybe I can knock out 140 miles in 2 days on like easier roads. So that was kind of the thought. But again, when John said he was going to the end, that felt right. I was so emotional. I was like crying with the thought of it. Just like, it just felt so right. And it felt important that I go there. And so ultimately, that's what I decided to do. And I shot Tim a text, the same Tim that gave us a shuttle to the start. And he was just awesome, super generous, and willing to pick me up from the hotel and give me the 2-hour ride back to Picket Post. And we got to Picket Post just in the nick of time. We drove in as Gregg had just gotten in his car to start driving out of the trailhead. And so we were able to flag him down and have a little chat and a little congratulatory hug and handshake there at the end. And now we will cut to that interaction with Gregg. And then after my interaction with Gregg, I'm going to have some final thoughts on the Arizona Trail.
Holy shit.
What's up, dude?
How's it going?
Great. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm shelled.
Yeah. Did you
Good
just
job, man.
finish?
Yeah, John was here for a little bit. I finished at 106, so like 3 days and 6. I can't do the math.
3 days and 6 hours.
John did the math for me. Yeah,
Cool. Good job.
that was wow.
Yeah.
Congrats,
A
man.
lot of stuff, you know.
Yeah.
I had like violent diarrhea the first day.
Oh shit.
It was like, oh, that's a good way to really.
Oh, that's whose shit I was stepping in the whole time. I knew it. I'm just
Were
kidding.
you stepping? I was like,
No,
oh,
I'm
you
kidding.
were.
I'm kidding. I'm
There
kidding.
was a couple times I had to like jump off the bike and be like, I'm glad this is not a group start.
It was the McDonald's. You called it beforehand. You called it.
It was just like violent. Like I thought I was a cow.
Huh.
Anyway,
Shit.
TMI.
Oh,
Right. Well, good job.
But yeah,
Keep 'em
like
with it.
got in the groove after that. Like
You and Alan were together quite a bit the first day.
he caught up with me because I was having to jump off. And
Right.
Then he passed me, and then we wound up.
Did you see Ian very much?
Ian was back with me at some point.
How is his wheel holding up?
I don't know. I was like
He was
taking a
still
little
moving.
siesta in
Yeah, I
in a-
didn't see him. I don't know. I wonder what happened.
After we were
He
leaving, I
passed me
thought
around mile 70 something, I think.
Okay, so he was still moving.
Yeah, he was still moving. He was ringing his bell and happy.
All right.
So you went to Tucson last night. I saw that.
Yeah,
So you just kind of called it last night.
yeah. I
This is the single passenger shuttle truck. It gets better mileage.
yeah. The heat really got to me.
Yeah.
I had the most amazing time. I had so much fun, but
Good.
I was the heat absolutely, coughing up blood and headache and
Oh, yeah.
nausea and
Dude, just so much.
I know. I mean, that's just par for the course. I was just like,
Somebody
I'm still
posted
processing
something about a nasal spray, like a saline
I
nasal
got-
spray.
My nose was just like I was
got a car.
squirty blood.
man, congratulations, dude. Proud of you.
Oh,
Dude, that is so hard. Was this your first time out here?
Yeah.
Was it harder than you thought?
really fucking hard. I mean, I've done some hard stuff, but this is like, there's a reason why. I mean, it lives up to the hype, dude.
Yeah.
Like, that's all I gotta say. It's like, there's a reason why AZT has a name, and it lives up to it, like, for sure.
Yeah, it's all that in a bag of chips. I'm a little sad that I'm calling it right now, but like also super proud. Like anybody who's done it knows how
On a
hard it
borrowed
is
bike.
to get to
Absolutely.
160 miles. Is like,
Heck yeah,
I'm
man.
not,
Yeah.
I can come back and train harder, and now I mentally know what I'm.
Well, now you know what you're.
Now I know what I'm in for, but
Right.
to come out here first time and
Yeah.
complete it is fucking mental, dude. That's fucking awesome.
To have been coming out here for 2 years and have ridden every single section and have the whole course somewhat known, and then come and do the 300,
Yeah.
that would be a lot easier.
And I beat when I won it. You know, my time won me 3.5 days, so I beat that. I was kind of thinking I didn't want to say anything, but I was thinking I could do under 3 days.
Yeah.
Which now
If
I
you
know
didn't
I
have the illness, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I think like the illness and plus logistics. Like I had to go into Oracle, like because I couldn't get resupply up on Lemon. I slept in the toilet up there.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't sleep. I like laid down for like an hour in there.
What toilet?
There's a Summer Haven at the top, It's
At the community center.
There's a community center. There's a bathroom on the side, and there's like a common room. I mean, it's like a mop room or something, and then 2 bathrooms. So I got in that common room and just like used the charger, put the mat out. I was just like eating a burrito, laying down. I turned the light off. I was just like, no one's gonna come in here at midnight, you know. And then I freaking psyched myself up. I'm like, I'm not gonna sleep. I'm gonna do freaking Red Ridge and Oracle Ridge. And I did it at night. And I was so stoked. Because that's like,
So Red Ridge, pretty rideable, pretty fun.
dude, it is like really intense, gnarly, like downhill.
My memory was that, but it was rideable,
Like
steep but
like
rideable.
like
Okay, yeah,
steep, like yeah. I mean, you need to have skills.
yeah.
Like you need to.
But Oracle Ridge is just not rideable.
Yeah, you're just not right. Downhill or uphill.
Right, right. And the push up from up through was Catalina Camp.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Just stop at the cabin at all? You didn't even see it because it was dark.
Well, Red Ridge has a creepy cabin. Like
Yeah, no, that's after you
Freddy's
descend
Den.
Red Ridge, then you're climbing a trail called Catalina Camp.
Okay, that's the one.
And that's where the cabin is. Yeah, it's kind of a creepy
That's
spot.
it. I was like, this is so freaking cool and creepy at the same time. I was like, this is wild. I was kind of tripping out because of no sleep.
I was, yeah.
Like,
I was actually
sometimes you
feeling
get
pretty
zoned.
good. The sun just like caught up to me and everything like hit
Yeah.
really hard. But like, it was hard. But I'm like, this is fun. I was smiling ear to ear. Just every single uphill had a huge payoff on the downhill.
for
And
sure.
I'm like, a lot of that shit bikes aren't supposed to be on.
Oh, I know.
It's like, you let us ride bikes here? Or like, are there no adults watching this to make sure this is okay?
No adult. Like I had a hiker like, are you sure? I'm like, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But how about that area like Colossal Cave where you kind of crest over that valley? It's before you go to exit to do the Rockin' K or whatever. You just see all those saguaros.
Oh, yeah.
It's like just hills and
Recon
and,
Valley.
oh my god, it was just like like the blooms were out and the saguaros are all green and it was just I had a sunrise in there. I was just like,
You know that bench cut section is probably around mile like 70 or so, like 65 or 70. It's like new bench cut.
yeah,
Just like full,
brand
like,
new, like
brand new.
yeah.
I caught that at sunrise on the second day, and I was like on cloud
Oh, yeah.
9. I'm just like, yes, this is so good.
I
And that
was-
section you're talking about is fucking
Yeah.
awesome.
Just amazing.
There was so much, it was so fucking beautiful, man. It's so
Yeah.
awesome to be out there. I loved it.
But to come out from like what you're doing, you're coming out of winter, man, right? Like there hasn't been hot yet. Where you?
It hasn't been hot yet. No,
So-
I'm not acclimatized. I mean, this is a really rugged. I mean, no
Yeah.
excuses. This trail
Yeah.
is fucking hard, and the climate is rugged and brutal.
Yeah.
And I understand now why it has such a high attrition rate. Like,
Oh, for sure.
it's
And
it's a
it's-
real
it's-
deal.
you do a
And
lot
I
of
have
hiking.
so much respect for people that can fucking finish it, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. It's crazy.
What's where were you headed right now? Where are you going?
I was actually just like trying to get some cell service, and then I was trying to figure out where, because I think if I turn right, it's that little community.
Yeah,
right?
Superior is just to the right.
Superior, like just like 6
Bob
miles.
Mexican food.
Yeah.
Is there any motel over there or anything? You think?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one little tiny,
I don't care where I sleep.
Yeah, dude.
One
You don't
tiny-
care. You've been sleeping at toilets.
right, one little tiny motel.
I've been sleeping like I slept.
If you were to go through Superior and you're heading,
He's going the other way though.
I'm heading back to LA, so technically I would want to go, but I don't want to be on the road right now.
you want to be on the road all the way.
Drunk. I've only had 3 hours total.
Yeah, it's
so
not.
Yeah.
it's not
Maybe,
bad.
You're not even here right now, man.
I'm
But-
like
but
plastered right. I'm basically like completely drunk right now.
6 miles.
If I got pulled over,
mushrooms.
I'd be like, I'd go to jail right now.
6 miles to the hotel, maybe we'll have a room
Okay.
in Superior, or 30, 40 miles to Apache Junction, and every motel on the. There's just motels. You got one motel that might have a room.
Take my chances
I-
on that one.
I might call them and see if they
Yeah.
even have one.
Yeah. I'm gonna.
Well, dude,
Yeah.
get some sleep. Can I give you a
Yeah,
hug?
yeah, please.
Congratulations, dude. I am like.
like, let's follow.
No, dude. I'll freaking
Yeah,
hold
you need to go
Oh,
there.
now-
Let's
now the
go
body-
to Superior and get a room.
That's what happens. Like your body
Oh,
just
yeah,
knows
you're
it's
gonna
done.
start
So
Right.
down.
Yeah. You've been in it, and then like once you're done, you're just like,
yeah.
dude, legend.
So glad
Thanks
you
for
came out
doing
and
this.
explained it.
This
Yeah.
is fun, man. This is
I'm so
fun.
glad you had the idea.
Yeah. Maybe do it again.
Let's do it again.
Yeah.
All right, man.
All right.
Take care, buddy.
Yeah.
Drive
Have a
safe.
good one.
Hey, man, drive
Thanks again.
safe.
Appreciate it, Tim. Thanks for the ride again.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got to get you guys up here and going.
Champion. You almost caught Chanel. Actually, I really wanted to. That would have been awesome. Yeah.
She did badass.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm curious to hear her story too.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, buddy.
Have a good one.
Later.
All right, so that was us catching up with Gregg right at the end after going 315 miles on the Arizona Trail, and he had only slept for 3 hours, as he just said, with a finish time of 3 days and 6 hours, which is just incredible for your first run. So congrats, Gregg. I'm so stoked for you and glad that I caught you, because that was kind of the whole point of getting off the trail and hurrying over there. So I'm really glad that we were able to make that happen. And I also want to give a shout out to Alan Jacoby, who finished 8 hours later with a time of 3 days and 14 hours. Unfortunately, he finished 8 hours later, so he probably finished like close to 9 or 10 o'clock that night, and I was already... I had to point that car east and start headed back to Texas and all that jazz, so I couldn't be there to greet him at the end. But another impressive run from Alan. I'm just so very stoked for both of you guys and appreciate y'all coming out and riding your damn bike with me in Arizona. It was a blast, and it was great to have a little bit of company, and just appreciate you guys so much. Also, just really happy for you. I now know how hard that trail is, and goddamn, I have so much respect for anybody who, man, attempts it or finishes it. Just, that is the real deal, and you guys should be incredibly proud of yourself. And I guess while we're here, I'll just mention that the fourth person in our little ITT group was Ian from Canada, and he was attempting the 800, but there was snow, and Angus, who had tried it a week prior, had to stop, I think in Prescott due to snow, and Ian was thinking the same thing, and so he had a good run. I think he said he made it up to Globe, Arizona, and then he called it there. But he wasn't on track leaders, but he was out there. So Ian, great job out there. It was good to see you, and thanks for coming all the way from Canada to come and ride bikes with us, man. That was awesome. All right, so let's tie a bow on this episode. Ride notes and reflections. The first ride note I have comes from me and from John Schilling. The gate at mile 52.5, there is a stretch, like a 2-mile stretch of private property between like the trail and the road that would lead you into Patagonia. And it was a big crux of my day one. You'll remember earlier in the episode, and I cut it very close to making the gate. I actually went back on track leaders to look. I know that I got past before sunset, but I was curious what it said on the internet, like where the dots fell and all that stuff. And so sunset that night was at 6:59 and last light was at 7:12. And you can see my track leader's dot pinged on the highway on the other side of the private property at 5:58. I actually made it there by 5:54, so I had 5 minutes to spare. But as far as like the official record goes on track leaders, I made it in the nick of time. But this is an important part of the route, and I had a little bit of confusion about exactly what the rules were going into it, and you know, that's on me. It's up to us to make sure we know the rules going in. So just to be clear, make sure everybody knows exactly what the rules are. Take a moment to go over that real quick. So on the route file at 52.5, there's a POI that says the next 2 miles open sunrise to sunset. No other information. So my assumption when I read that was that when it says sunrise to sunset, that was talking about the official sunset time, because you'll know that sunset might be at 5:59, last light might not be till 7:12, but you could actually see without headlights till 7:30. So I was unsure at the time when I was riding the Arizona Trail exactly what the rule was. Like, could I ride until last light, or did I need to, if I got to the gate at 6:59, I had to call it right there. So I was going to default. Like, if I couldn't make it by official sunset at 6:59, I would have camped prior to the private land. I would have camped there, and I would have had a nice rest, and then I would have started the next day. There is no way that I would do anything to put the route in jeopardy by violating the agreement that the Arizona Trail has with that private landowner. I think that is crucial to being a good steward of the bikepacking community and a trail user and an outdoors person. So that's why I was so stressed about it whenever I was leading up to it, because I knew I was cutting it closer than I would have liked to. I didn't want to play that game. But anyway, just so everybody else knows, if you get to that gate and you don't have enough time to make it all the way through the 2-mile property before the official sunset, you must camp prior to entering that private property. You cannot camp on that person's property. You cannot ride on that person's property. You cannot be on that person's property after sunset and before sunrise, as the official time is. And so you'll just have to check the official time. And John recommends using timeanddate.com and searching Patagonia, Arizona to get the official time that the sun sets and sun rises, and to abide by that. So anyway, just a note there. I made it by the skin of my teeth, but just in case anybody else was wondering what the rules were, I wanted to clarify that. Now, shifting gears a little bit, I want to speak on how I'm feeling about my attempt at the Arizona Trail and how I feel about my decision to quit. I can tell you that when I was riding the trail, I was having the time of my life, and I was continually proud of myself and impressed by myself and impressed with my body and what it was allowing me to do. I was impressed with my mental attitude, and I just thought to myself over and over again, like, what a special thing to be doing, and how fortunate am I to be out here, to be experiencing these beautiful views, and to have a body that would hold up to the challenges. Oh my gosh, I'm tearing up. But it means a lot to me, like, that was an adventure of a lifetime. And I feel so happy to have got the chance to experience it, to see it, to do it, and to make it as far as I did. And I really felt like when I was thinking about quitting, I really didn't think that it would bother me that I had stopped. I really felt like, hey, Patrick, you did your best. You had the trip of a lifetime. You will remember this for the rest of your life. You will talk about this. You will learn from this. You will grow from this. You will be edified by this. And I'm sitting here in my home 6 days after leaving the Arizona Trail, and that still holds true. I could not be, I couldn't be more happy. I couldn't be more proud and honored to have the opportunity to just go out there and experience a real desert wilderness environment. I love desert landscapes. I love being put in situations where you have to rely on yourself. And even though I didn't finish the goal of doing the entire 300 miles, I accomplished so much, and I learned so much, and I enjoyed so much, and I saw so much. Like, my cup is overflowing with just gratitude and happiness, you know, like, and so there's no way that I could like look back on that experience with anything other than joy, you know, like the trail's not going anywhere. I can go back and try it again. And I will say, like, the only sadness that I feel, and I felt it sitting in there at the hotel, is that I wasn't going to get to see the rest of the trail. So I saw like the first I did 163 miles. I think like 155 were on the route or so. So I saw about half of it. And the thing that motivated me and made me really want to keep going was I just wanted to see the rest of the trail. Like, I just loved it. And it was so hard, but also, yes, it was so beautiful. And it's so cool to just be out there and have nobody but yourself to abide by, to listen to rely on. And I really thrive in that. I mean, yeah. So the only sad part for me was not getting to see the rest of the trail, but again, it is going to be there forever, hopefully, and I can always go back. So other than that, one bit of sadness, I am leaving the Arizona Trail with so many positive feelings about everything, about the trail, about the community that surrounds it, about my body and my ability to at least and to make it that far. Like, anyone who's done the Arizona Trail will know that making it to Tucson is hard. There's nobody that's going to go out there and be like, oh, that was easy. That was an easy 160 miles. Those words, I can almost promise you, will never come out of anybody's mouth. I don't care how freaking tough of an athlete you are. That is hard. And, you know, I'd recommend to people, if go out there and just plan to ride from Monument 103 to Tucson, do that 160 miles. Like, that's a great introduction to the Arizona Trail. I assume, again, I haven't seen the rest of it, but that's a great ride. And if you don't have time or think you don't have the physical fitness or just want to kind of dip your toe in the water of the Arizona Trail, man, leave your car in Tucson, start at Monument 103 and ride that. That is a real accomplishment. And so, yeah, I'm stoked. I'm walking away with just all the positive feelings about myself and about the trail and about my experience. And it really kind of like reignited a part of my love for cycling and for the outdoors and for bike packing that I hadn't experienced in a while. You know, like, it's not very often you get an opportunity to push yourself that hard in such a remote place. And it was just a good reminder for me of how much I really value those experiences and really, truly enjoy them. So, yeah, good stuff from the Arizona Trail. Let's see, what else do I have on my notes? One other motivator for me that I haven't ever really talked about is that one goal and motivator for me doing the Arizona Trail was to get a better understanding of what these athletes that I interview are doing. You know, like, it's one thing to talk to somebody about the Arizona Trail and they tell you that it's hard. And it's an entirely different thing when you go out there and when someone says, oh, there's a lot of hike-a-bike and this is a hiking trail, not a biking trail. And, you know, those are words and you can kind of understand what they mean. But until you go out there and experience the thing, all they are is words. And as a podcaster, as a person in this space, like, it's a personal goal of mine to try to have more of these personal experiences for myself so that I can internalize them and have a better understanding what the person I'm talking it to is going through. And then hopefully be able to have better conversations and better podcasts and that kind of stuff. And so, you know, as a podcaster, that is my job these days. I had this alternative goal of, in addition to like my own personal goals, but I had professional goals to gain a better understanding of not only this route, but like just pushing yourself to the extreme and really finding out what it's like on the edge. You know, there's so many different ways to ride your bike. There's so many different ways to bike pack. And I am always super inspired by human potential and what these humans are doing out there, riding for weeks on end with very little sleep. And I'm just so impressed by their efforts, and I want to experience a little bit of that for myself. You know, I don't have the drive or the motivation or desire to be an athlete, or probably even the fitness or anything else. I mean, that's not really my jam. I'm really inspired by the outdoors and adventure and just getting out there and riding your bike, you know. But I really want to dip my toe in that water a little bit to gain a better understanding of what these people that I'm talking to are going through. And so that's one of the takeaways that I got from this experience is like, I didn't do the sleep deprivation thing. I'm not too interested in doing that, but just pushing it to my own personal limit and going out there on the trail, it really did give me just a completely different understanding, a much better understanding of what the Arizona Trail is. And I think that that's going to help me have better conversations surrounding harder bikepacking trips whenever I have those conversations on the podcast. So we'll see how that goes. To be determined. All right. Well, this has been a long episode, and I'm always super awkward about these episodes that are just featuring me. They feel a little self-indulgent, but I can tell you this has nothing to do with my ego. If I had an ego, I wouldn't be putting out episodes where I DNF, right? Like, this is definitely not about me, but I do survey listeners at the end of every single year, and one of the things that I always hear is that y'all are really interested in more route coverage, like more information about the routes themselves. And so this is my attempt at sharing with you my experience from the Arizona Trail. I think I'm a pretty average guy. I'm a pretty average cyclist. I think I probably represent a large majority of y'all who have kids and are busy, and, you know, life is hard and challenging in and of itself. And then you want to go and have these big adventures. You want to, you know, you're inspired by the stories that you hear and the videos that you see on the internet or whatever it is. Like, you're inspired and you're like, yeah, I want to go do some of that too. Well, that's me. And that's how I feel. And so this episode, I hope, is helpful for other people who are thinking about going out and doing the Arizona Trail. My advice to anybody who's thinking about taking it on is to not underestimate how difficult this trail is. It can throw everything at you. I mean, the trail itself is hard, but when you throw in the variability of the weather, this area of Tucson, depending on the time of year you can go, it could be 1,000,000 degrees hot. It could be below freezing, and it could be below freezing and 1,000,000 degrees hot all within the same day, as it was this past October at the group start of the Arizona Trail. And so, you know, my advice is to do what I didn't do. And even though I talked to people about the Arizona Trail, I did not fully realize how difficult the trail actually was going to be. And maybe there is no way to really find out until you go and experience it. But that's the goal of this episode, is to share with you my experience in a hope that it provides some valuable information for other people who are interested in tackling this trail. A huge goal for me with Bikes for Death is to make the outdoors more accessible, to get more people riding their damn bikes. And I think one of the best ways that we can do that is through information. And I think information should come from all sources. This is just one source. This is just my experience. And I appreciate you joining me for the ride. I hope you enjoyed it. And I think with that, I'll just leave it with some thank yous. So a lot of people really helped me to get to the start line and even through the race. And I just want to, first of all, thank Gregg, Ian, and Dan for coming out and tackling the Arizona Trail with me. I put out the invite for others to join me on this ITT, and it was great to have some other riders in the field. And again, I'm just so stoked for those guys for their amazing efforts out there and results. Also want to give a huge shout out to Tom Seymour. He is the listener who let me borrow his, hold on, let me look up what fucking bike this was that I was riding. I think it's a stump jumper is what I keep saying. Yes. So he let me borrow his 2021 Carbon Stump Jumper S-Works for the Arizona Trail, which is a super nice, super expensive bike, and one that I was reluctant to ride on the Arizona Trail. My experience with full suspension is mostly riding it around Texas, where, in my opinion, for my own personal riding style, is just kind of overkill and can kind of like dilute and take away some of the enjoyment on the trail. But man, I am eating my words on this one. I could not be more wrong. For me, the full suspension bike was an absolute must-have on this route. I can't even imagine how much harder it would have been on a hardtail. And not only that, but this S-Works is a freaking sweet bicycle machine. And I was telling Gregg, like, it's not very often you get to test like the full potential of a bicycle, but I'll tell you, Tom, I'm sorry, but like I pushed your bike all the way to the edge. I was hucking it over every rock and just fucking sending it down the mountains every single time. But this bike performed at such a high level. Like, I feel so lucky and so grateful to have such a nice listener to send me his bike and let me use it. I got so much value out of it, and it added so much not only like enjoyment to my ride, but also just like bike handling. It really performed and allowed me to tackle ground much more aggressively and much more quickly than I would have been able to otherwise. And it was cool. I'm like, okay, this is the kind of terrain where a full suspension bike, especially a high caliber one like this, can really shine. And I was impressed. I was really impressed. It made me eat my words about full suspension mountain bikes quite a bit. So anyway, thank you, Tom. I'll be sending your bike back to you very soon, and I think it's still in good condition. So I don't think we had any damage to the bike. I'm pretty sure it got out unscathed. So thanks again. Next up, again, I want to thank Old Man Mountain for helping last minute scramble to get this rack situated. Eric from Old Man Mountain, he was on the phone with me on Sunday, not on a work day, figuring this out, and he came through. He wound up shipping the rack to Campfire Cycling there in Tucson, Arizona, and those guys there had the rack built up, so when we were driving through Tucson on the way to the border, they had it all built up and helped me install it, make sure it was solid, and I could enter the ride with a high confidence that the rack was installed properly and it was all going to work. And it did. Like, I was so impressed with like the Old Man Mountain stuff and the bike. Like, coming in to this ride with so many unknowns on the equipment side was a little bit scary, but I was just overly impressed with how other than that one little mechanical I had at the beginning, which wasn't really a mechanical, that's just, it was just a barrel adjuster on the shifter. It was like nothing. But other than that, like the bike and the equipment just held up so flawlessly. No flats, no issues. So that was freaking awesome. And I appreciate y'all so much. Also want to give a shout out to Natalie for being my confidant and just kind of supporter out there when I was on the trail. As I mentioned, it's so valuable to have somebody else who's not like sleep deprived and experiencing heat stroke, and their brain is working well, to bounce ideas off of. And she is just such a calm, reassuring, thoughtful person. And it was just so helpful to like have somebody else to kind of bounce ideas off of and make sure that you're thinking correctly, and to be affirming and to be understanding and all of those things. And I really appreciate her for, her kindness and being willing to kind of pick up the phone and chat with me whenever I needed to, and talk me through any of my silly bike life problems that I was having. So appreciate you, Natalie. Thanks for being there for me. I also want to thank the listeners and the followers. It's funny, but like, I think the most popular thing I've ever posted on the internet was me quitting. I posted a story on my Instagram about me quitting the AZT. And I think I've never got so many affirming messages and just kind words and likes and everything. Like, even before the AZT started, it was shocking to me how many like emails and messages and text messages I got from so many people around the world that I don't even know. And I'm overwhelmed with y'all. I'm so appreciative of you for caring about my silly little bike ride, and for sending kind messages and everything. Like, like I can't deny that, like, I mean, I do have a public presence, and I was worried a little bit, not a lot. It wasn't like at the forefront of my brain, but it's definitely a consideration. Is like, not finishing the AZT, are people going to be like, this guy's a joke, he can't handle it, whatever, any like negative stuff like that. But y'all, like, not even close to that. I got an overwhelming amount of messages from people saying nice things, and people who seem to genuinely care about me. And, everybody was just so affirming that I made the right decision, and sending me well wishes, and just really caring about me. And I just want to, God damn it, I just want to say thank you. I mean, we don't know each other, but I just want to tell you that your messages and your kindness mean a lot to me. So thank you very much. It means the world, probably more than you know. Final thoughts are, it's 6 days after I finished the AZT, and I can say with 100% confidence that it was not a good idea for me to continue on the Arizona Trail at this time. The effects from the heat stroke lingered for far longer than I expected. Today is the first day that I'm feeling pretty normal. But for the 5 days after the Arizona Trail, I felt not okay. Like, if you've ever experienced like heat stroke or heat exhaustion or even these heat related illnesses, it's hard to describe exactly what it feels like, but like, it's like memory loss and fatigue and confusion and dizziness. And it's just very apparent that your body and your brain are recovering, and they are not okay. And the only way to recover is to drink fluids and to rest and to keep your body temperature cool. And it would have been a very bad idea for me to continue on, even if I have given it another day to rest. Like, it took me 5 days to recover, and it was actually a little bit scary, not super scary. I actually think I got very lucky with Tucson being where it was. And stopping when I did. I think if I had pushed it too much further, I think I could have got into like a little bit of a danger zone and a little bit of a bad place. And so the thing is like, when I was in the hotel, and you're trying to like ramp yourself up and talk yourself into it, and you want to keep going, and you set this goal, and you can really dig your heels into that. And especially when your brain isn't working too well, it could be easier to convince yourself that you can keep going. And so I'm really grateful. I think I got kind of lucky, honestly, because I had that message with John Schilling and he said he was going to the end. And that made it kind of easy for me to latch on to that and be like, oh yeah, I really want to be there for that. And so I'm going to do that. And I focused on that. But I think if it weren't for that, I think I would have kept going. And I think that would actually, I'm pretty fucking sure that would have been a bad idea. So I'm pretty grateful for how all that worked out, because I mean, these bike rides are fun. They're important to a degree, but a word of caution, everybody out there, and to myself too, is take care of yourself. Like, we all have people in our lives that love us and care about us. And, these efforts can have huge impacts physically on our lives. And heat stroke in particular is one that, if it goes too long, can have like lifelong repercussions and lifelong damages from it. So like, it's a real serious condition and not something to be taken lightly. And so, I learned a lot from this one, from the first pedal stroke to the last pedal stroke. I learned a lot on this trail. This trail taught me so much about myself, but it also served as a good reminder to take care of yourself and to prioritize your own health, your own safety, and your own well-being over your goal. And it's fun to push it to the limit. It is interesting to see what the potential of the human body is, what your own potential is. And I love that about this sport, but it should never come at the cost of your own personal safety or your own personal health. And sitting here in my house, I am nothing but happy, overwhelmed with joy. I had the time of my life, and I am so happy and grateful to be home with my girls, feeling healthy, feeling well, feeling accomplished, and I am ready to take on the next challenge. So the next challenge will not be the AZT, I can promise you that, but I do for sure want to go back and finish the Arizona Trail. So I don't know. I'm not going to say what I'm going to do now. I'm going to think about it. One thing I thought about on this race, or on this ride, is I am not a racer, and that I don't want to be a racer. My mantra is pro slow. Like, I have no desire to go fast. I'm out there to enjoy it. I do enjoy the physical part of it. I enjoy pushing yourself. But the racing side, I'll leave for other people. So from here, I am interested in like tackling some much more manageable rides, some much more kind of like fun and less extreme stuff. I'm looking forward to some of that, but I am wanting to go back and at least finish the Arizona Trail, finish the 300. So when I go back, I'll either start in Tucson and ride to Picket Post and experience the rest of the trail so I get to see it. That's a common thing in through hiking. You see it all the time, where people will, hike to a point and then they get off the trail for a summer and then they go back the next summer and then they finish the trail or whatever. And I think we don't see as much of that in cycling just because you can cover so much more distance so much faster. But for me, the thing is seeing the trail. I want to see that trail. I want to experience it. And so there's a chance I might ride from Tucson to Picket Post. But I might try the whole thing. Give me some more time to recover from this experience and get some more fitness under my belt. No matter what, I can promise you a couple things. I'm going to train harder going into it again. I'm going to try to get a little bit more heat acclimatized, heat adapted. I'm actually thinking about bringing on somebody on the podcast to talk about how to handle with heat. I'm sure we talk about other stuff too, but that's something I've been struggling with lately, and I'm wondering what I could do to improve to manage heat better. So that's an area that I would improve on, and I would definitely be riding a full suspension bike again. And I'll go in with like a better frame of mind in terms of like knowing exactly what I'm getting myself into, which I think can help to mentally prepare for what you're going to do. So I guess that's about it for today's episode. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I need to talk about before we tie a bow on this, but I think this one's long enough. Just want to thank Old Man Mountain and Campfire Cycling again for helping me get to the start line. Tom Seymour for loaning me his bike, and everybody else who sent just nice and encouraging words along the way. And with that, I will leave you until next time. But until then, you know what to do. Go ride your damn bike.